Welcome to the Monday, April 8th, 2024 meeting of the Finance and Warrant Committee. First on our agenda is public comment. Is there anyone that wishes to address the Finance and Warrant Committee on anything? As has been our process after, just a clarification for that, after each presentation on each article, we, after the FinCom members have an opportunity to ask questions, we would open up to the audience for anyone that had a question or anyone participating hybrid. Is Liz on?
She just came on.
Okay. I think by statute I have to call attendance, don't I? Yeah. I have to do an attendance. Kevin?
Present.
Mike P?
Present.
Sarah?
Here.
Michelle?
Here.
Chair's here. Michael?
Present.
Mike Emery?
Present.
And Cindy?
Present.
And Liz?
Here.
Thank you. First on our agenda is a public hearing on Warrant Article 17, which is the feasibility study for the school department. Who's here for the schools? Good evening, Superintendent.
Well, good evening.
Good evening, Deputy Superintendent.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us again. Before we begin, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce the village that is here to support us. We have John Lemieux from Vertex, Jonathan Levy and Carol Harris from Jonathan Levy Architects, John Tachi, SBRC Chair, John Heffernan, our FinCom designee on SBRC. We have our Director of Facilities and Maintenance, Matt Hafner, Deputy Superintendent Ian Kelly, and both Chair and Vice Chair, Vice Chair Briggs and Vice Chair Hebert, at here as well. So thank you. I want to just kind of take you back just a little bit here and remind you why we're here. So we're before you because the Dedham Public Schools, in partnership with the SBRC, has been gaining momentum around a school building project. Through years of research and conversation and dedicated resources gifted through or honored us through to Dedham through MSBA, we have been able to look at different areas and considerations for a new school building project. So where the town, and the school department, and the SBRC landed was a combined Green Lodge Oakdale school. So in that process, the funding awarded to Dedham by the MSBA was used to conduct all of the research and all of the facility requirements to establish a setting and a design for a potential new school to present to our constituents at town meeting. We've also, you're all very aware of, through different conversations Dr. Kelly and I have had with you about the increase in enrollment in Dedham. And it has positive and negative effects. And so one of the positives, in a way, was it allowed us as the school, and by us I mean the school department and our school committee, to pause the project. We have been hearing from the community that there was a lot of discourse about whether a combined school was the direction that the town of Dedham wanted to go. At the original point of application for the MSBA, they allotted us only around 250 for a standalone Oakdale. Due to the growth in our district and the projected growth to continue, the school committee and I and SBRC, well, the school committee chose to take the opportunity to pause the project. Instructed me to go back to NASDAQ and ask for another round of more concrete enrollment projections. Those came back, we resubmitted those to MSBA, and they came back to us with different enrollment options for the 3 different options that originally were presented. This standalone Oakdale was presented as an enrollment of 360. That then made sense to the committee and to the community. So what we're here for tonight is additional funding to, if you will, tweak the work that we've done up to this point, creating a combined Oakdale Green Lodge The analogy Dr. Kelly and I like to use is we were building a duplex, and now we're building a single-family home. So not a lot of change, but enough change that we have to look at our planning. We're still going to keep the same site. We still have the same, all the soil, all the traffic studies, all of the work that we've done building up to this selection are all going to be maintained. But we need to seek additional funding because we did our due diligence as the school department in seeking a deeper dive into the enrollment projections, and MSBA honored that request. So we're here before you to answer questions regarding the additional funding. A lot stays the same, but obviously there needs to be some changes to the plan as we go forward. So we're here to help clarify your questions, hoping that we can provide you what you need to be able to support this warrant come May.
Thank you. Thank you. You said the feasibility funding for the first project, that was from town meeting, though, not from the MSBA, did you?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Just so that
Thank
was
you.
$1 million, I believe.
Yeah,
was
thank
the
you
first.
for that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Kevin?
Assume the answer's obvious, but the alternative is you can't go forward if you don't get this money. Or is there another?
I would think for the answer to that would be no. I'm no architect. I mean, perhaps somebody has a better answer for me. But again, if we were building a duplex and you're changing it to a single family, in order to be thorough in your build, you would want to make sure your plans match your intention. I guess I would call on anybody else if they had a different opinion of that.
No, I believe that would halt the process.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe what I might suggest now is a member of this board sent some questions that I think were very on target in the process. I think everyone here has a copy of the responses. And my suggestion right now is if you could take the time to go through each question and then what the response is, I think that would perhaps address some additional questions that any members of the board would have. These were submitted by my colleague, Mr. Leahy.
We didn't get these until now,
We were just, this was, guys, my understanding is the school department worked and the SBRC worked on the responses to those questions, and we have them now in front of us, so.
Correct.
Dave, can I get those via email after the meeting?
Certainly.
I'm going to have Nancy send them now.
Yes. You will be getting them right away, Liz.
Yes, sign language, John Heffernan, I got that.
That's why he's our designee.
Can I make a comment?
Just before you start, Michael?
Hi, I'm Michael Leahy. I want to thank you folks for looking at the questions and providing the information that you gave to us a few moments ago. I just want to preface the comments and remarks about these questions by saying that I wrote most of these just to remind folks of where I was in various parts of the project, watching from the outside in, and just some reminders of some of the things that I know came up during the process. They are by no means a commentary on a need or no need for a new school. We all know that a new school is needed. And I personally am looking at the financial ramifications of what is ahead of us, and that was pretty much where the source of these questions came from. So I just wanted everybody to know that, because I know it happened fast. I sent them to John late last night, and so anyway, it's kind of a quick draw on all of these, so, but thank you.
Great.
Perhaps before we go any further, if folks are watching on TV or whatever, could you address just the total appropriation request at this point for what you would be presenting to town meeting?
Correct. So the additional funding request for Article 17 would be $263,553. That is, the total cost of the remaining, or for the remainder, is $345,539, but we have 81,000, just south of 82,000 from the initial appropriation left. So the balance would be $263,553.
So how much was left from the initial $1 million?
81986 to be exact, is what's remaining from the initial 1 million
Yes.
appropriation.
Everybody have that? Yep. Okay. You can-
So that was question number one on the list. So hopefully that's addressed adequately. So we can stay in order to the extent that it's feasible, but in terms of, there were a number of questions regarding kind of, hypothesizing about the future of MSBA involvement. And I think it would be appropriate to defer those questions to Mr. Lemieux and Vertex, if you don't mind. Would you, Mr. Roberts, would you
Why
like
don't you
us
just
to
pull,
pull
why
up a chair?
don't you pull up a chair?
Okay.
We'll have a campfire. Just state your name and the company, please.
Sure,
for the
John
record.
Lemieux from the Vertex Companies.
Thank you.
We're your owner's project manager for the project. So the way the MSBA is viewing right now is you have a signed feasibility study agreement with them, which when the $1 million appropriation happened way back, they basically said, okay, we'll reimburse you up to 47.21% of that, or $472,000 as a maximum ceiling. What they're considering right now are two things. One, had the enrollment not changed, you would never have spent the remaining 81,000, okay? Because you would have capped off your bills at 920 or so, 919,000, and they would have given you 47% of that. Because of the enrollment change, they're saying, okay, so we have two questions to answer. If Dedham spends the extra 81,000, is that still under the original agreement, or do we consider it rework? And subsequently, they asked us what was the amount of the additional appropriation, and we told them it's 263. They're considering whether or not, right now as we speak, and I reinforced with them today that it would be really great to have the answer to that question prior to town meeting.
Yes.
There's a likelihood that they will, because at the end of the day, they change the enrollments, right? I won't use the duplex analogy, I'll use the football analogy. This project got to the 1/2 yard line and spent all of that money based on a combined 550 student school. And the need for this is because that ball has just been moved back to the 50. And we have to go through that other half again. And while the superintendent's correct, there are, it's not huge changes, it's a lot of process. Okay, it's about this much documentation that has to be redone. And while there's a lot we can reuse, the foundations aren't as big if we take the third floor off. The building isn't as long if we lop the end off. Those questions haven't been decided yet about how we're going to achieve this smaller school. So a lot of that is still out there. But again, back to your original question, feasibility study agreement, what they're considering right now is to amend that feasibility study agreement to raise it from the $1 million up to $1,263,553 and grant that 47.2% reimbursement rate across that whole total.
Okay.
So we're working to try to get that information from them. They're considering it in-house because they do realize that the new information, although forwarded by the town, they issued the new enrollments and kind of set us down this path as well.
Okay, thank you. At this point, any questions from my colleagues about this? Michael P.?
Yeah, I apologize. I just got this tonight. I didn't get a chance to read through the whole thing yet. It may be in here. But with the increased enrollment, is it absolutely not feasible for the original proposal to hold the additional students, or is it just the new enrollment figures for Oakdale now make a standalone possible, but the combined is also still possible, or is the combined just not possible anymore?
I will tell you from a technical standpoint, the combined school goes to 40 classrooms. Those 40 classrooms at a minimum, even though the enrollment is 665, at Dedham's usual classroom goal of 20 students per room, that 550-student school could hold 800 students. That has impacts to parking, to traffic, all of those things. So the feasibility of that combined school, when the enrollment was increased, really made that school, and I'll go back to the school department for that and to the SBRC. I think both committees felt that that's just too big for that neighborhood.
So the building is still possible, but the neighborhood traffic is the issue.
It's a whole host of things.
Okay.
The building gets bigger. I believe the 550 was 30 sections. So we're talking about 10 additional sections. The building grew by 30% classroom-wide, 33%. Went from what would have been 30 classrooms now to 40. So it's the enrollment, MSBA speaks in enrollment, but enrollment is not the same as capacity. We talk about design enrollments and the amount of children that they look for when the district and its design team kind of lay out what the space summary looks like for the building. But the reality is that if Dedham takes the 550 combined the combined Oakdale Green Lodge was 550. They upped that number to 665. Just like the 235 standalone school was raised to 360, they also increased that combined enrollment. That 665, thank you, that 665 student combined enrollment requires 40 classrooms. So those 40 classrooms would likely hold more than 665 kids. They would hold roughly 20 kids a classroom. That's how you get to the 800. And the cars and the drop-off and all of that concern, it's quite a jump from the 550 that had been previously calculated.
And then just one final question. How far out are the projections that we did, the updated projections we received? Could this be a one-time bump? Or is it like a 45-degree slope where it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger?
It levels off, but it doesn't decline from where we are now. So the numbers that we are in right now goes as far as, I believe 30 years is the report that we initiated. So we are confident in saying at this point, as confident as you can be, the formula that they do use takes all of Dedham's building data, the permits that are being requested for building projects, for growth internally, for single home, for multi-housing situations. So they have birth rates. Due to all of that data collection, they are projecting that we maintain or increase. So there's no sharp decline.
Thank you.
Liz, I'm Sarah. I got Liz in front of me, yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that with the enrollment changes, we would have had to do a new feasibility study regardless of which school scenario we chose? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Because the original numbers were 235, 450 for a 235 standalone, 450 combined Riverdale, Oakdale, 550 combined Green Lodge, Oakdale. Those numbers shifted to 360, 565, and 665. So all three numbers went up. So in reality, everything that has been submitted to the MSBA, the preferred solution that we submitted doesn't exist anymore because all of the numbers changed.
Okay, because, and I wanted to emphasize that because there's concern, I think, that we're doubling our efforts or somehow wasting money by doing this additional feasibility work. And it sounds like, no, we would have had to do it no matter what, so.
Good point.
Thank you.
Mike Emery?
Yeah, so just want to check my understanding. So I know we've been different projections on the cost of the school, but looking at this 50.3 million, I know 263 is a lot of money by any person's standard, but also, if my quick math is right, that's 1/2 of the cost of the project. So which doesn't seem like something particularly material in a project of this scale, particularly something that you could see we're going to live long enough with that our great grandkids could be going to this school. Do I have that number right, or?
The request for Article 17 is 1/2
Of the projected cost of the
this-
school at this point?
After MSBA reimbursement.
After, yeah.
After.
Yeah, that's.
So even less than 1/2
The
of
math
the
is
total
right.
cost of the project. So just scope and scale.
Yeah, it's also
All
important.
set?
This was when, yeah, the other one, 235. So that number will
Oh, I was wondering.
increase.
Yeah.
Yeah, just as a point, that, the slide that showed the original 50.3 Oakdale only option town share, that was when it was only 235 students, right? So now it's at 360. So that 50.3 will be updated as well. So to your point, if your math is based on 50.3, it's actually a smaller piece because that standalone school will cost more.
Perspective.
Right.
All set, Mike?
Yep, thank you.
Before we go on, I just want to make sure, I just want to address something to our colleague Liz. Hello, Liz. That we can't see her on the TVs because of some issue. Only Doreen can. But we can hear her when she does have any questions or anything, just so that's clear to everybody. Okay. And you'll let me know. Okay. You have a question, Liz?
I do have a question, thank you.
Go ahead.
I was under the impression that the spike in enrollment this year was a surprise. Did I misunderstand that? Because then, I guess it leads to, how do we know that won't happen again? It sounds like we feel confident that the enrollment numbers will stand. But if this year's spike was a surprise, makes me question, will we have to go back for new enrollment numbers?
So, yes, it was an unanticipated jump in enrollment. However, these NASDAQ numbers, they are only as good as, the current data or it's not unusual for them to be off every once in a while. So any superintendent will tell you that they aren't definitive, that they are issued once a year with the intention to help inform planning. It is not in concrete, it's not in stone, it's, again, a formula. They do their best they can to make projections about 30 years from now. So I wouldn't be able to say with definitively to you all that this won't change, but this is the direction that we've been informed to go based on data that MSBA is very accustomed to looking and reading and examining. And they have looked at our patterns and are in agreement that we are going to be consistently at these numbers.
If I could follow up.
Certainly.
Was it the spike that led us to go back and ask for an update in enrollment numbers?
No, Dedham Public Schools, we're part of a partnership with NASDAQ, and we get those numbers issued to us on an annual basis. So when those, yeah.
All set, Liz?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Just I can say one thing from my past experience with SBRC and et cetera, those enrollment fluctuate quite a bit in some cases.
Yep.
I remember studies that were produced 10 years ago and 8 years ago that just didn't reflect what has occurred now. And I do know that they are very diligent in their efforts. They talk about building lots and everything else within a town and what the projections are, so. Okay. Anybody else with this one? Okay, moving on.
So number two. So number three was asking for a cost comparison of the standalone option for Oakdale, Green Lodge, Riverdale to the combined school scenario. So it's my understanding that we don't yet have those projections yet.
That's correct, because the prior slide that was included with the response really was based on the prior set of enrollment data, right? So obviously, if you were to go with the Oakdale only now, you could potentially save some space in the other two schools, right? Because at the end of the day, you're trying to find spaces for all of the children of that age group. But you're still left with two other schools that were noted as, having needs, having to be addressed at some time in the future. When we did our initial review of this back some months ago, we said, okay, let's look at it as if we do two now, well, you'll finish it and then maybe you'll do another one in 5 years. If you were to do them all separately, we would do one at plus 5 years and one at plus 10 years. Obviously, all of that is our assumptions, right? It's as fast as you as a town want to go and as fast and as much as you can afford. I think clearly, the more you do sooner is the least amount of money to you at the, in the long run, right? Because the one thing about public construction is it always goes up. Prevailing wages never decrease. Escalation, while it has flattened, I don't know the last time I saw negative escalation. Things just don't get cheaper, unfortunately.
Any questions on?
I just have one. When I wrote this question, this was the slide I was thinking about because I had remembered seeing it. I looked for it on the project site, but I don't know if it's still there. But this is exactly what I was, pointing to. And projections aside, I know these are outdated based on all the changes. I guess from a very high level, when I look at the standalone school options on the second row versus a combined school option, whatever that combination may or may not be, it's obvious that there's a savings going with a combined school option. And that was really my point, that there is a savings going with a combined school option. And to your very point just now, as far as speed and replacement costs associated with speed and replacement, there are so many other things that need to be considered financially. And again, I'm talking financially. The students are suffering, I get all that. But I'm just looking at it from a financial standpoint. I'm looking for more guidance, and there's a question later on the list about why a standalone school is a better financial option for the town versus doing a combined school project. I know the benefits in the question, and I'm not trying to skip ahead. There are some very salient points listed in that answer, which I did not consider, but maybe we can just put a pin on that until we get to that question. But this is really what I wanted to see. And I wanted, again, to remind the audience, whoever might be watching or seeing this later, that we certainly have to consider where we are financially as a town for a project of this magnitude. So, thank you.
Thank you. Michelle?
I don't know if this is for now or if it comes up in a later question, but is there any flexibility and what would the impact be on our funding to have enrollment at the standalone school more than the enrollment number that they came up with?
I won't speak for the MSBA, but I will tell you that typically when the enrollment numbers come out, they're out and they're solid. There's no real, while way back when the town was first invited in, I believe there was some good discussion with Chairman Tachi and maybe the prior superintendent about getting those numbers lifted. I will tell you that in the interim of when we started having the discussions with MSBA before they gave us the finals, that standalone option at 360 was 315 at one of the interim mile markers when we were having discussions. So, I do not believe we have the flexibility to go back and ask for the further reconsideration beyond what we have. They offered it, the MSBA board voted it, and they moved the town back, into eligibility, but still in feasibility, basically saying, we've given you a chance to see this, now come back to us, to the last gentleman's point, what we are striving to do right now as a project team is, regardless of the outcome of this article, is get a new preferred schematic report put together, which basically looks at very things that you're asking about. Basically, what would it look like to do? Because remember, they gave us two other enrollments as well. So the 5+ and the 6+ are going to be going through all those iterations, just so the SBRC school committee can see the numbers in front of them, right? Because financial is one consideration, but then what does it do to the list of other things that superintendent will talk about in that question later. So, I don't think we have the flexibility. We can always ask the question, but at this point, they stopped the presses for a good 4 or 5 months to reconsider those numbers. To go back and ask for more now,
I guess what I'm asking is, because I'm assuming that they base that number on their projections for, like, our current districting, is that right? Based on what, like, and what Oakdale would expect?
the new they based it on the new NASDAQ numbers.
Because I guess where I'm going at is we were trying to put more kids in that school, through redistricting, to the point somebody just made a minute ago, right? So that there's less school would have to be built in future school.
So how many students are there right now?
Somewhere in the 275 range. So
Okay.
there is capacity in
And
the new
and the
enrollments.
new sectioning is 20, is that correct? So 20 classrooms. So at 20 classrooms, at 20 students per classroom, that's 400. So the standalone school will take the students currently enrolled there and then some
Yeah.
at that point. Again, that's the
And
difference.
more if we were to do 22 or 23 kids per
Correct.
class. Yeah.
Correct.
But, so our funding from MSBA, though, isn't really impacted on who we put in, but what number we choose, right? Okay. I think-
No,
Yeah.
no, that is correct, because they give the town the option to, here's multiple enrollments to consider. If you choose a combined, they will apply their funding based on their equations evenly, depending on how, their rules for cost per square foot and caps on dollars per student will be the same, whether it's not the same value, but the same application of their funding formula, regardless of the enrollment decision that the town makes.
Okay, thanks.
What's that? Anyone else? Moving to the next one, and I'll preface this question because it talks about class sizes from 18 to 25, the range, whatever. What is the square footage that you're projecting on your schematic submissions for each classroom, approximately?
I believe it's, John, is 900?
900?
950 with
950 what?
950 with the attached teacher room between the two classrooms. There's an accessory space to each pair of classrooms that adds a little bit to the size of the classroom.
And approximately at this point, and I won't hold you to it, average class, square footage class size in the existing Oakdale is how much, approximately?
Mr. Hafner, any ideas?
I don't remember anymore. That was quite a while that we studied that, but it was quite low.
Okay.
I remember it being in the range of 7. It was inadequate by the current MSBA standards.
Excuse me?
It was inadequate.
Inadequate, okay.
Typical classrooms in the existing Oakdale were inadequate by current MSBA standards.
And 900 is the MSBA standard, correct? That what we are asking for is what?
Wait, before,
Correct.
could you just take a chair, because I don't think we'll be able to hear with the cable, please, if you would. Bring your chair up, sir. Your name and company.
Thank you. It's very good to be with you here tonight. I'm Jonathan Levy, Jonathan Levy Architects. So your question was the size of the existing classrooms, and I don't recall specifically because it's been, and I didn't come prepared for that.
Okay.
But I do remember that it was quite small. And the reason, just briefly to inform you, that contemporary classrooms are larger than the old classrooms is because we teach students very differently today than we used to. We used to line kids up in rows. Sometimes the desks and chairs were fixed on the floor. Today, the students move very flexibly around the classroom in multiple groupings, learning groupings, and there's more space needed for all of that activity to occur simultaneously.
Okay.
I will also add that our teachers are incredibly capable, and so they make space. So our students do have breakout spaces to do that work, but they are remade closets. We are working in, hallways in small groups. So we are doing classroom instruction in very challenging settings at the Oakdale, regardless of square footage.
So on question 4 here, the question was, were to increase class sizes from 18 to 25, how would that impact the cost of the standalone school option? And basically, the response is, you're building a school with 20 classrooms. Is that correct? That's the projected schematic design that you would have, 20 classrooms.
The standalone option with the MSBA is saying a 20 classroom school, yes. And at the end of the day, I would just caution that any discussion of if you were to lose a classroom, right now those classrooms are even quantities across the different grades, right? So at the end of the day, if you were to lose a couple of classrooms, you're losing a couple of classrooms and leaving certain grades short a classroom, right? So so that creates a whole other kind of issue. Additionally, if your classroom space really is, well, yes, it drives square footage. It's not a one-for-one discount, right? So if we said just big picture, $1,000 a square foot, you take away 900 square feet, did I just save $900,000? Not entirely, because your HVAC system didn't get any smaller. Your power to the building didn't get any smaller. Maybe you're building a few less parking spaces. So it's not that one-for-one. I'm looking at this, you can't just, if I take off X square footage, it goes down Y.
Sure.
It goes down some discounted amount of Y. Yes, at a certain point, if you cut enough, you could put a smaller air handling unit or smaller other major components. But it's not always that one for one.
Michael?
That's exactly where I was going with that question. I'm sorry for the lack of clarity. Your cost savings if we up the number of students and cut the number of classrooms, but it sounds to me like you have that covered. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, moving on to number 5. Ian?
These are the odds of being invited back into the MSBA for the
Yes.
2 remaining standalones. I think, Mr. Tachi, you had written this answer, but we had discussed this earlier today. I mean, the district, the town has been invited into the MSBA process 4 times in the last 20 years. I'll quote Mr. Lemieux, I won't speak for MSBA, but I think it's,
The reality is that it is a super competitive process as costs have gone up. In December of '22, they invited 10 communities in. In December of '23, they invited 19 communities in. And that's when I say that's 10 buildings plus 19 buildings. So we don't know how many they're going to invite in. But as an example, when like a Brockton gets invited in, that school could be $800 to $900 million. It takes away the opportunity of a number of Oakdales, right? Because their pot is only so big. So we have seen a kind of a shrinking of the number of people that get invited in. Back in '22, they invited people in March and December. In '23, they only invited people in December. So we're assuming that we're probably not going to see any more invitations until probably December of this year. And that process is, submit a statement of interest and go. We do have experience with having communities be invited back, but usually the project that's being built already is in its final phases of closeout before they'll let somebody back in. I'm not aware of any town that has had, at least in our firm, where we've had 2 in at the same time. Jonathan, you?
No.
So it's
The committee needs to understand that
Please.
These projects are 5 years in duration, so that's an important thing to remember. Yes.
And I will add that we did submit a statement of interest to the MSBA for the acceleration repair for the high school. So we already have one in the pipeline.
they view that one a little differently.
It's a little different
Yeah,
funding.
because you're trying to keep an asset that's, if we give you, my words, not theirs, if we give you money for roofs and windows, your building will last longer.
Right.
You won't be coming to us for a new building as fast.
Isn't the funding source through MSBA a little bit different than what is for the accelerated program, or?
It's the same.
It is, okay.
It's the
I
same.
thought it was-
The process that you go through to be accepted is abbreviated. Is a lot of the same parts.
Yeah.
But again, they have gotten very good at administering that. The word accelerated is no joke. It goes much faster. You're going from a statement of interest and when you get the approval, you could be doing that roof or windows project inside of a year, at worst 2, as opposed to these projects where 2 years just for feasibility schematic,
Yeah.
then another year to design, and then 2 to 3 years to build and close out. So it's, Jonathan's point, it's a 5 to 6 year period, whereas accelerated repair is really trying to get you done in a year or 2.
Just a quick question about the MSBA program. Let's look at the Riverdale School, for example. Knowing the condition of that school as we do, how much is the condition of an asset taken into consideration when you submit a request to be invited into the program? I know there's probably many criteria, but where does that particular item stand on the list of importance?
So the MSBA has seen Riverdale, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when you submitted the statement of interest, they sent out a team and they looked at all of your elementary schools. And that's how they come up with those enrollment numbers, right? Based on the projections they have at the time, they say, okay, they're here for Oakdale, Riverdale, Green Lodge. Let's also look at the other elementary school spaces that are open. They look to see where there's capacity. They look to see where the empty seats are, right? So that at the end of the day, that's why there's always that battle of the enrollment. Is it high enough? Is it high enough? Because they expect you, if you've got a classroom empty over at Avery, fill it with seats. And if you have to redistrict, they're not going to pay for empty space somewhere else, right? They look at that and they really take a hard look too at your facilities, the facilities. The statement of interest is very detailed, it was for this submission. And then they come up with their own audit team and take a look at it and say, that's the basis of the invitation. They looked at those schools and said, you know what, you have 3 schools that have a need. In our opinion, we think Oakdale's the worst. So in our mind, any solution you propose has to deal with Oakdale. You can put it wherever you want, but that Oakdale building will have to come offline. And that's where the Oakdale only option came from. And then they said, okay, you want to do these other 2, Oakdale needs to be a piece of it. You can do A and B, or A and C. So, they are familiar with it. So, if you were to submit again, it's not like it's brand new. They have history and understand. It just becomes a question of competition and the other competition from the 351 cities and towns that are also submitting every January in that process.
Okay, thank you.
All set. Anyone else? Move on to the next one, Ian.
Number 6, this is just projecting the costs associated with maintaining Riverdale and Green Lodge over the next 7 to 15 years, as we would need to keep them in operation. So Mr. Hafner has put together a very detailed response. I'll summarize, and then if there are direct and specific questions, I'll ask Mr. Hafner to join us. So Mr. Hafner and I talked about this earlier today. So when you think about maintaining Riverdale and Green Lodge over the 7 years, there are the general operating costs associated with the buildings, regular maintenance, then kind of extraordinary, repair work that's going to need to happen over the years. The mechanical systems are aging and will need attention in the years ahead. And security. We have pushed off major security projects on both of these buildings because the future was unknown, given the Oakdale process. So we have been installing safety vestibules in the schools that do not have them, security cameras, et cetera, and so forth. So when all in, Matt's, I would say conservative, Mr. Hafner's conservative estimate for the next 7 years, Riverdale at 3.15 million beyond normal operating costs, and the Green Lodge 3.7 million over the next 7 years beyond typical operating costs. And as I said, if there are specific questions, I'll ask Mr. Hafner to join and take those for you.
Anyone? Sir?
So in the the first couple, or the first sentence after the response, in the response to 6, it says that the ADA and state accessibility standards are triggered if we spend a certain amount over a certain period of time. And it looks like these expenditures that are estimated will trigger that. So do these estimated expenditures include the cost of complying with ADA requirements, or?
They do not.
They do not.
So we did the stagger a little bit, unfortunately. As everybody knows, I'm a broken record. We need roofs. That's paramount, and we also need security. But we would have to figure out a way not to cross the threshold, because that would be astronomical if we had to bring these buildings up to any. They're not at all near compliance. They were compliant when they were built, so they were grandfathered for that time. But once we start hitting thresholds, we have to bring it up to today's codes. So we'd be putting Riverdale elevators, accessible, like very little accessibility in both of these schools. So there'd be major implications behind doing this.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, Matt's up there.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Could you say, you mentioned the boiler here, that with the new stretch code requirements, could you talk about those?
That's the $1 million question, and I was asked to get this today, so amongst other things, I don't know if you noticed outside. We have steam boilers. The Green Lodge has 2 boiler rooms. One has a newer condensing boiler, which is only a few years old, so I'm not factoring that in for the next 10 years. The front boiler room, back in 2012, we did a huge energy project with Siemens, so we have steam boilers they're basically steam boilers. They last about 15 years in commercial applications. If you go with higher quality, they last longer, but what we have are kind of basic. What I don't know is, because of the energy code and what's happening, there's a big push to get rid of fossil fuel. And I don't know what's going to happen in a few years with all that. I'm not versed in that, but I'm thinking we might have to look into other options, electrification. So if we were to do something like that, we'd have to bring the whole infrastructure of the building up with new electrical switchgear, everything, and it could be out of control. So I'm assuming if we could just put like for like in there on a basic boiler room what we have, I'd say they're about $300,000 I'd use for placeholders for those, because it's more than just 2 boilers. It's burners, it's controls, it's associated piping. There's a lot going on. We wouldn't change it from steam, because it would be too much. We'd have to change the entire facility over, so we'd kind of stay with steam. But right now, if you ask me what I thought it would cost, it's about $300,000 per boiler room.
That's a question. Michael? Oh, I'm sorry, Liz, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. When we think about the cost comparison, the slide at the bottom of the email, I would be interested in thinking about maintaining an additional school when we don't combine as well, but I'm sure the comparison is done to be apples and apples. How would we think about comparing maintenance? Because I know even new buildings need maintenance, but do we have that assessment? It wouldn't be the same as the $400,000 roof plus the other things we put into Green Lodge.
So the problem is that these schools have they need major upgrades. All the infrastructure is, 80 plus years old. So all the piping, ductwork, everything in these buildings, and basically if we want to maintain these things, we're going to go over the threshold for ADA. So we're going to have to kind of redo the majority of the interior of the buildings and the exterior of the buildings. So it's a hard thing to quantify. We've just been limping along, and it's kind of what we need to continue doing, unless we're going to just drop as much money to repair these things as it would be to replace them effectively.
I guess I'm asking, is it fair to say there would be maintenance savings if we,
No.
between the two different systems,
Well,
but it wouldn't be simple?
Operating maintenance? No, I don't think so, because newer buildings are more complex, so they do require typically more maintenance, but they're more efficient. So while it costs you more to maintain the equipment, they usually use less utilities. But there's definitely the old systems are just run fat, dumb, and happy. The newer ones are much more precise, so there is additional maintenance on newer buildings.
Thank you.
Anyone else on this particular topic? Okay. Moving on, Ian. Number 7, I believe.
Number 7, if not feasible to participate in the MSBA program for the 2 remaining schools, what is the plan to fund construction? Well, I don't want to speak for our elected officials, but Mr. Tachi, school committee, would you? Well, the question is, how are we going to fund these schools should we not receive MSBA support? I mean, the direct answer is taxpayer dollars. Is that fair? Okay, just.
Unless there's a benefactor out there that we don't know
Yeah.
about.
And I didn't win.
Yeah, it's pretty clear. I mean, who knows what the future's going to hold, one way or the other. I mean, the town is facing some financial challenges at this point, and not only for this coming year, but for next year, and perhaps the year after. So finances is a major concern, and should be, to not only elected boards, appointed boards, but also to the folks in town, taxpayers, so. Michael P.?
Yeah, maybe not, if we can't get the MSBA funding, is it possible to combine the other 2 schools to get some of the savings that we see on the, on this slide?
Your decision to what to do with the other 2 schools is yours. It really is. The reality is you could.
Well, I guess what I'm asking, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. I guess what I'm asking is, are there limitations where it's just not feasible for the only feasibility of combining schools was Green Lodge and Oakdale? Is it feasible to combine the 2 remaining schools to get some of that savings back?
Yeah, I mean, if I recall correctly, it's been a while since I've been fully involved in this process. If I recall, during the site selection process, Green Lodge, the site was not up for consideration for a rebuild on the same site because of the ledge. Is that? Right, so rebuilding a combined school on the Green Lodge property while Green Lodge is operational is not feasible. Riverdale, if I recall, the field adjacent to was suitable for construction while school was in session. So, I mean, I'm also, we've been thinking about these questions all day, but unless we select another site somewhere in town, the combined would be at Riverdale, which does not, I don't know, but it's, I guess to answer your question directly, yes, it's possible. I don't know how logistically yet that would function. And there certainly, if we were rebuilding in Riverdale, there would be a major redistricting of the population. I mean, huge. But yes, the short answer, it's possible.
Okay, thank you.
Michael?
This is more of a statement than a question. As it pertains to the long-term debt that is coming off of the books between 2029 and 2032, as a committee, I think it might behoove us to find out what that is. I know it's come up in discussion before, because for those who have not been staying on top of this project with the level of detail that you folks have, and for anyone out there who's listening or watching, it might be a good reminder and make folks feel a little bit better about, the standalone school concept and paying, out of pocket for the 2 remaining schools, whenever that might be. So I think that's really important for us to consider.
Is John on? Doreen? Is John on? No. Yeah, please. Mr. Arnett, our finance director, is participating via Zoom, so just we are reaching out.
Yeah, they provided that for us already. A one-pager, March 20th.
Oh, did they?
Yep.
Oh, forgive me.
Hello, everybody.
Hi. The question came up, John, do you want to repeat your?
Actually, John, in response to one of the questions that we posed here at the hearing tonight, long-term debt that's rolling off of the town books from 2029 to 2032, as it pertains to paying out of pocket for the 2 remaining schools. Pretty much I said that it would give folks a better level of comfort, knowing how much was going to roll off, seeing the situation as it is today. But Michelle just spoke up and said that we already got that, so I apologize. We already have that number, so.
Was it extended out that far?
Didn't go out that far, I don't think.
It didn't go out that far?
FY '26,
It's on-
Oh, sorry.
Yes,
The figure you gave us only goes out to fiscal year 2026. If we could get an update going out to 2032, that would be awesome.
Got it, 2032, all debt roll up. I think I overheard as well, that you're focusing really on the 2029, 2030 in particular.
Yeah, those are the dates that are, in the response to the question. However, more data is better than less in this regard, so.
Yep. We'll do, I'll be able to pull that up, and should I have an update for you Wednesday?
Awesome, thank you very much.
thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we'll have some more information. And when you get that, John, be sure to share with the school department too, with Ian and the superintendent.
Absolutely, no problem. Will do.
Okay, thank you. Any other on this particular? Sarah?
This may be way too tangential, but you made the comment that there was a lot of ledge in the Green Lodge site, and so we wouldn't be building on the fields there. What would it look like when we get to the stage when we're replacing Green Lodge? Would we have to have a different site, or we would have like temporary classrooms on the fields and then tear down?
Had not even been super considered. I will tell you that, if you're familiar with the site, there's playing field is on rock, and clearly it looks like somebody made the decision, we're not blasting the rock, just put the field up higher, right? And then behind the building, there's rock that just goes up the hill. The reality is that there were other issues with the site, with maybe a stream and setbacks, which really, we build on rock all the time, right? I think it was also a combination of, and I'm going to say what Jonathan said, it's been a while since we looked at that, right? The buildable area was just smaller, right? You could build something there, okay? You could build, we built an entire temporary high school in Watertown and moved 700 kids across the street into modulars because the only place to build the building is where the existing Watertown High School is. So you can do that. I don't want folks to think that, oh no, the site, you can't do the site. It's just not as advantageous. When you compare the Green Lodge site to Riverdale, there's no comparison, just for ease of access, of space, and those sorts of things. But the Green Lodge site, you could build on that one too. It's just, it would cost you more. It would cost you more, and there would be more to coordinate and figure out from that standpoint.
Thank you.
Yep.
All set? Okay. Anyone else? Liz, anything?
No, thank you.
Okay. Next, number 8. Ian?
Is the standalone school option in the best financial interest of the town at this time, or any time in the foreseeable future? I was talking to John, Mr. Tachi, about this earlier and confirming kind of with John. I mean, is maintaining 3 schools more beneficial than maintaining 4? Yeah, it is. And replacing those schools, as we've discussed, in a shorter time horizon is less expensive. So, I mean, that's not a very direct answer, but I mean, if we have 3 buildings that we need to maintain over the next 100 years, that will be very beneficial to the town's financial future. In the meantime, it's challenging.
I think I'll just add to that, as we reflect back to this process, and I, again, joined the process very late in just this year, but there was a lot of community concern about the selection and the combining schools and determining. The most advantageous decision is partnering with MSBA. So we were looking at our enrollment, and we were grateful for the opportunity to find a solution that was financially advantageous in partnering with the MSBA, and also something that we felt our community could get behind.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Expanding on Michael Leahy's question earlier about the projecting out essentially for a number of years. We've talked about each of these pieces sort of individually, like just for example, we have the whole discussion in the operating budget about our disappearing levy capacity under Prop 2.5 and how we're sort of seemingly coming to the end of a line in the relatively near future, which, we're all cognizant of. And now we have this speculation about, 2 new schools, 3 new schools, at what time. But one of the things I haven't seen is sort of all those things put together, because they all tie together. Like, we always look at on the operating budget side, what's the impact on the average residential tax bill and project it out. And the last thing we looked at, we're bumping up against $10,000 a year for the average residential homeowner. In that, in a year or so, or we're almost there next year, and certainly there the year after, unless something dramatic changes. When you layer on top of that, the impact of one new school, looks like a standalone seems the most likely, but project that into, what does that translate into, the impact of that on the average residential tax bill? Add that in. Second school, how many years out from that? And granted, they're guesstimates the further out you get, but what would that look like? Because, people need to have the full, like we talk in terms of it would be cheaper to do this than that. Well, cheaper is a relatively elastic term. If we had something, even sort of, not firm projections, but the best projections we could get, people could, I suspect people would react very quickly. A lot of people that think they want, neighborhood schools might change their mind depending on the number at the end of the day of what is that actually going to cost and over what period of time. So, this is kind of a John Arnett kind of thing in conjunction with you folks. But if we could get the town's best projection, sort of on all levels of, the debt that's coming off, any other debt that's going on, the impact of that debt on the levy, and then the impact of 1 school, 2 schools, 3 schools on dates certain. And then, the ideal outcome would be the town's best estimate of what is the average residential tax bill going to be in 2032 if we do all 3 or all 2 or whatever of these things, on top of everything else that's going on, with stuff going on to the, adding to the debt as well as subtracting. And I know that's a really tall order, and I know that it's not going to be precise, but I think we all just have to start thinking about this in a broader perspective over time with one. It all ends up in the same place, and it all ends up with a bill that everybody gets, in the mail every quarter. And how big is that going to be? And, how big can it be? Before, and then that should inform all these other decisions that we're making. So, anyway, thank you.
On the heels of that, Kevin, what's your timetable? Should this requests for additional funding for the feasibility study, what is the estimated time, SBRC, whatever, that you would have a cost estimate, and when it would then come to us and then to town meeting? Any idea on that?
So we do, because obviously as part of the process and the delay caused by the new enrollments, we didn't want to lose a year, right? Because it easily could have been. Right now, the project team is working to submit the preferred schematic report May 2nd, and that would then be approved at the end of June MSBA board meeting. they would invite us into schematic design. We're looking at submitting that schematic design by the end of August, which would give us an approval at their October board meeting for scope and budget. And that would be then 120 days from that October board meeting that the town would have to vote on the project. Now, there's already been, and I'll defer to Chairman Tachi, there's already been some discussions with the town, because that puts you right, election season, but that's the target, this late fall, for the time to ask the town for, at town meeting and then at a ballot vote for the funding for whatever the final option is.
Direct this question to the SBRC. Are you looking then to perhaps have something, John, if you could come up, for consideration for the November town meeting of this year?
Yeah, Mr. Roberts, thank you. That is, Dave, sorry, yes. The goal is to have both the townwide vote and the town meeting vote this fall. So in the fall of '24. We've engaged with Mr. Munchback. Of course, he provides fantastic guidance to us. So the specific dates, we've got to determine whether we can actually have the townwide on the federal election day, and whether we can have the town meeting vote at the regular town meeting, which is optimal since people are going to be voting anyway, right? And we won't have to have a special election or a specially called town meeting. But we haven't gotten that far yet. We've got to talk to Mr. Munchback some more about that.
So you're saying you're looking at a town vote running parallel to the November election season, was the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, whatever the Constitution says? Is that what you're looking at? Because town meeting doesn't happen until the second, third week in November.
Right. We're looking at possibilities right now. And it's my understanding that a debt exclusion can be held on a federal election day, but a 2.5 override cannot. That's my understanding of some of the rules. So it could, but we're only talking about possibilities here, Dave. We have not set dates. Okay. All we're really talking about is in the fall, these two votes, we want these two votes to happen in the fall because that fits a timeline. Then we're going to be able to get, the school built as
in spring
quickly as possible. We'll start building it in the spring and then, open it in
after
27.
a year of design.
Right.
You've got to finish the design first.
Well, that's right. I'm sorry. The design
The whole
starts.
idea of that fall is that that's 6-month impact, and if escalation is about 5% a year right now, this re-enrollment is costing 2.5% on some number as opposed to a full 5%.
Okay. Because that, on the heels of Kevin's request, I think what we would look for is the approximate cost at that point of what a new school would be. And then that way, John and our assessor folks can then figure that average impact, average residential along those.
As I had said to you earlier, where we were on the half-yard line,
Yeah.
we had all of that stuff teed up
I know.
for that 550 student combined option. That's
Right.
absolutely, the sooner we can get that info, we realize as a project team, as soon as, basically what happens when you submit the schematic design to the MSBA, which would be August, within 2 weeks of that submission, you have what's called your project scope and budget call with them. That's the call where they say, okay, you as a project team have estimated our grant, here's what our grant really is, right? And we do our best to get as close to that as we can. So 2 weeks into September, you would have the number, and at that point, working with finance, with the town and say, okay, what is that impact to the voters? We would have that information in early September and then use September, October, early November for educational purposes and, keeping folks updated. Of course, we'll know where that number is driving prior to that. And, we will have ballpark of where that is. But 2 weeks after submission is roughly when that call happens with MSBA.
Okay.
And they will commit to say, this is the number that we're going to vote on.
Thanks for clarifying that, because I had a different impression. Mr. Mr. Driscoll, did you have?
You asked a question about the November town meeting.
Yes. Dan Driscoll, the moderator?
Unlike the spring annual town meeting, which has a fixed date of the third Monday of May, the fall annual town meeting has no fixed date. And part of that is, I'll use the term, the town wants to close its books, it wants to get the free cash number certified from the state, wants to have that information. We've had it in late November, we've even had it, if my memory serves me correct, early December once. So there is flexibility, and I think that's probably the good news. You don't have to rush to get it in early in November.
Thank you. That helps. So we have a rough idea on the timetable, and then when, so we would have an idea of the cost factor minus any grant reimbursement,
So
middle of September?
we will have, if you recall, prior iteration, when we submit this preferred schematic report, that's our first indication of cost, okay? It's from a very high level, okay? It's not, you know, we have an indication of cost because we have that to be able to compare it to the other enrollment options as an example, for comparing them to each other. And so as an example, we get a construction number, we add 30% to it for soft costs, right? When we get to August, we have a number that's got 40 pages of drawings and a set of specifications. The design is actually 25 to 30% complete. That's a different level of estimate. At that point, we then complete basically a 100-line budget sheet. That 30% that I'm saying is all your other costs. It then becomes a line item for furniture and technology and our time and Jonathan's time, contingencies for just in case, all of that gets enumerated, and it's usually about 30%. So between in May, when we submit the preferred schematic, and August, when we submit the actual schematic design, we work towards making that number much more specific. Of course, we want it to stay in the same general ballpark, right? Just to make sure that we, not so conservative that we're scaring people, but not so rosy that we're at the other end of the spectrum. We're trying to give you a realistic number. By the time we get to September, we will have, or August, I should say, Jonathan's cost estimator and ours, just as we had for the 550 option. We'll have looked at it. Those cost estimates are basically done by professional cost estimators who aren't trying to give us the lowest number. They're trying to give us the number that if the job was bid today, they're giving us the number that would be in the middle of the pack. There were 7 bids, they're giving us mid number 4, roughly, so that we have a little bit of flexibility, because again, we're committing to this number that won't be bid for another year, right? Year plus.
When do the FALSA bids come into this equation? It's after you got your bid out, though, right?
Oh, a year after design, right?
Yes.
And the town also has to reconsider. They had originally talked about, always using CM at risk as a delivery method. We have to reconsider that and see if that's in there. Whether they use that or not, FALSA bidders are called trade bidders if you use CM at risk, but that process of bidding won't take place until the design is essentially almost complete, which will be a year after the votes that the moderator just talked about. Because Jonathan Levy and Associates will need about a year to finish the actual bid drawings, where those 40 drawings will become, 300 drawings, to detail the rest of the design.
Just to summarize, so we have a rough idea, working on what you just spoke about in terms of a timetable, those things come through, and successfully, a debt exclusion is voted. What are we talking about, shovel in the ground for what would be that approximate date?
So it's a great question. So if we were to go without a construction manager, the design needs to be 100% complete.
Design, build.
Design, if we were going to go design, bid, build, needs to be about 100% complete before you put it out there. With, an approval in, say, December of this year, 24, you would spend all of 25 designing. You're looking at roughly a spring groundbreaking. Spring of 26. So ultimately, you're looking at roughly a school year start of September of 27. If we do stay with CM at risk, you have the opportunity to start a little bit sooner with what's called early release packages, which means the design isn't 100% complete, but foundations and steel can be completed, and that CM can bid those packages early, get them on the street sooner, possibly save a little bit in the long run by bidding that stuff sooner. Again, that's a decision that the SBRC will have to make and confirm moving forward, because when you submit the schematic design to MSBA, you need to commit to what's called your delivery method, design, bid, build, or CM at risk.
And
Go ahead.
CM at risk is sometimes a little bit more upfront, but could possibly
Correct.
save you in terms of change orders and things like that.
I think what I'll summarize for the SBRC, and John, tell me if you disagree. Ultimately, given the fact that it was a neighborhood school, close to abutters, a lot of coordination, and the fact that, as I said, that the cost estimates moving forward would be done with Jonathan's cost estimator and then the builder who's building the building, right? So it's just, from my standpoint, especially in these periods of higher escalation, to have somebody who's bidding work every day, not just estimating, is a nice combination of talents there. And you also benefit from, they're on your team sooner. You're not waiting until the design is 100% complete. Right. You get their feedback and saying, hey, in the marketplace, these widgets are really expensive. Maybe you shouldn't use these. You should use something else. Right. You get some real-time feedback of what these builders are encountering in the marketplace.
Plus, they have an idea of what's going on the streets, too. Absolutely should.
Yeah, I don't know if you have to reaffirm that, though, with the new, yeah.
I would think you'd have to, because it's a different project and different considerations.
But they had voted for it for the 550 option, correct.
Any other questions?
Just one?
Sure.
I just read for the first time this, that you feel strongly that the Robin Reyes Fund should be used exclusively for school construction. So maybe it's a topic for another day if you want to add to that. But I'm just reflecting on, to keep in mind that we spent the last few months doing deep dives into other departments in town. So I've been in the basement of the library for a couple times and took a look at our 35-year-old fire truck.
Yes.
So
soon to be 35.
Soon to be 35, so it's just a year away from being that antique you see in the parade. And these construction costs have been going up everywhere, and the cost for a fire truck has doubled since we last bought one. So one of the things people are going to be voting on is $1.5 million for that. Feasibility study for a new library. Things that aren't happening are things like a new vehicle for the Council of Aging. So, our ability to provide transportation. So there are trade-offs, and I know that you've been passionate about the schools, and everybody here has been really focused on that. But there are a lot of needs for the town that we're going to have to consider as a community. So please try to keep that in mind as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? Liz, do you have anything?
No questions, but, I think, and that's the issue, I find what the way the school committee and the SBRC advocate for our children is admirable. And then we're tasked with advocating for, 25,000 taxpayers. And the picture, I love what Kevin Preston had to say. We have to let's look at the whole picture together.
Thank you. By the way, I spent 20 years on the SBRC, so I get a little bit of those questions. And the SBA has changed 3 times, 4 times really, in the way they do it. So, anything else? Thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will, I'm sorry. Thank you. Anyone else as I said before, anyone in the audience which would like to ask a question or comment? Ms. Briggs?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, thank you all, because you obviously have done a whole lot of homework, but I did want to remind you that the school committee took a vote, and they're the only ones who can take a vote on who or what school we decide to go with, what enrollment. So we already voted March 20th that it will be a 360 standalone school. So for this specific project, there won't be any more discussion about combination school. The town did not support it. We came before the select board, the planning board, and it was not supported as a project. So that is why we, that and the beautiful number of 360 students is how we ended up with the standalone. As far as the library coming in sooner than later, that building I've been in love with since I could walk there when I was 5. So it's very near and dear to my heart. The schools have had a 25-year master plan that we've been working off of. And every school project has come in, and much because of the leadership of Dave Roberts, on time or under time, and on budget or under budget. And I think that our track record really should say something about our next project. We were able to use Robin Ray's funds for the ECEC. It was on time and under budget, over $1 million,
1.6.
So I think that needs to be duly noted, and I think that being told that the children can last in these buildings another 50 years is not okay. It is absolutely, yes, we're passionate about it, as every taxpayer should be. We should not have students in buildings that are frankly unsafe. And that's the bottom line. So I know that tonight's warrant article before you is only for $263,000, and that's, thank God. But it does have future ramifications. We tried our best, and this is where we landed. So we would really, the school committee specifically, SBRC, I'm on both, really would appreciate your support on the $263,000 so we can get the next project moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Question? Oh, yes. Say it again. Paul Poria on Zoom. Go ahead, Paul. Can you hear us, Paul? Okay. You with us, Paul? Okay. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
It works. Marconi works.
Yep. Yeah, Paul Boria, Whitehead. I have nothing against the amount 263 for the feasibility study. But I just want to try to take a step back and try to get an answer to something that seemed to have, I don't think have been given to the residents, where when the $1 million feasibility study was done by the school committee 4 or 5 years ago, they said they found that Oakdale was the most in need. Number 2 building was Riverdale. Then number 3 was Green Lodge. So one question I would like to get answered: how did Green Lodge go before Riverdale when it was supposed to be a combined school? That was my first question.
Thank you. Mr. Tachi? John?
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, Mr. Poirier. The decision to go with a combination Green Lodge, we had 2 choices: to combine Riverdale and Oakdale or to combine Green Lodge and Oakdale. And for a number of reasons, including the locations of the populations of those schools, the location of Riverdale, the decision was made that a Riverdale-Oakdale combination was just not feasible, wasn't fair to those communities, to those students, in that the best combination would be a Green Lodge-Oakdale combination, where you had the proximity of the districts, as was indicated in the fall, where the entire Green Lodge population would have been going to this brand-new school, most of the Oakdale population, if not all, as well. And then we're left with just building one more school. So that was the plan. It was because of the fact that it was a combination. Now, if we're talking standalones, of course, we'll have to make decisions, but in the SBRC's view, Riverdale was next in line after Oakdale, just because of the condition. Riverdale's 104 years old, 103 years old now, and really in dire need. Thank you.
Mr. Poirier, did that address your question?
Yes, so basically, the distance outweighed the fact that the MSBA says Riverdale is in more dire need, but apparently distance outweighed that. I disagree with that. But moving on, if Oakdale's single school is built, what is the next school to be built, and what is the estimated time frame for that?
Yet to be determined, Mr. Poirier. I'll go back and say I don't quite agree with the way you summarized the answer that I gave, but that's okay. In your second question, though, we have indicated early on when we were considering whether to build a standalone Oakdale that Riverdale would be next due to the condition of the Riverdale if we went with a standalone. But again, that's something to be considered in the future. We've got a task in front of us right now, and that's to build a 20-classroom school at the Oakdale campus.
So it sounds like the number 2 school would be Riverdale, correct?
It's to be decided, but certainly in the past, we've indicated that Riverdale is next in line if we had a 3-school plan. But again, it's to be decided at the next step, because we're talking about something that is going to be in the 2030s, early 2030s, hopefully.
And from the people that didn't like the combination school, there was a lot of people from Green Lodge and the manor that didn't like the combination school being at Oakdale, and I got the impression they thought that the second school after Oakdale would be Green Lodge, and I just want to make that point clear, that looking at time frame, it's probably going to be at least 8 to 10 years before the second school is going to be built, and Kevin brought up some great points that you have to look at the whole picture. Right now, looking at the old numbers from the old study, saying that the difference between the single Oakdale and a combined Oakdale Green Lodge was roughly $4 or $5 million. So now that's going to change with the new enrollment numbers, where that range of 4 to 5 million between a single and a combination, which one, is not going to be just 4 to 5. It's probably going to be 5, 6, 7 million, if not more. But my point is, now that it's a single school, which is probably going to cost around $80 million, I think that's after being reimbursed the 30% roughly. Then you have 8 to 10 years from now, a second school might be Riverdale. That's probably going to cost out of pocket an additional 125, 130 million most likely without reimbursement. And then if you get the Green Lodge, which as you mentioned would probably be an ad reno because of all the ledge and other things that you mentioned previously. By that time, that's going to be 12 to 15, 17 years out, and that could be an additional 130, 140 million. So I think that what Kevin Preston mentioned is critical for people that are just looking with blinders for a single school, that you're approaching the $300 million mark, and that's not even talking the high school, which is going to be 25, 30 years from now, probably 300, 350 million principal only before you even count interest. So between all of those, you're talking $400 to $500 million gorilla on the back of the taxpayers. So I just want you guys to see if you can make sure that all of that big picture information is relayed to town meeting members so they can take off their blinders. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone else? Anyone else from the audience that had any questions? Sir.
Hi there, Ed Dockham, 75 Westchester Circle. I came here really just thinking this was going to be pretty much a quick approve the 266 because of the school committee making the vote, saying they wanted a standalone meeting. What I came to what really I'm coming to discuss is in the article, which was what was in the original article from for the $1 million, was the statement that Wallace while with also studying the possibility of consolidation with other elementary schools. That's still in this warrant article, and I think it should be removed. If the original $1 million warrant article didn't have that in there, the 235 undersized school would have been stopped in the tracks, and the problems that occurred wouldn't have had this delay. So I think we are looking at a standalone school of 360 per school committee vote, so there's no ambiguity to have that text removed. Thank you very much.
Just quickly, and the reason why we can't remove it is because the MSBA, in making their approval of the new numbers, are requiring us to consider all three options again. So that would be a 360 enrollment standalone, 550 combined Riverdale, Oakdale, and a combined 665 enrollment Green Lodge, Oakdale. So the school committee has spoken. They have approved the 360 enrollment option. The SBRC subsequently voted to place that at the Oakdale school. So that's really a done deal, but the MSBA has rules, and one of the rules is we need to consider these other options. So that's why the language is there.
Also, once a warrant article is published and put out there, you can't change it. So the wording has to stay the same. That's just the bylaw and the way it works. All set on that? Thank you. Anyone else? John Annette? You there? Oh. Well, hold on to John. Go ahead, please. Put John on hold for a minute.
Mary Gilbert, Precinct 4. Do you need my address too, by the way? Okay, Precinct 4, town meeting member. You know, I'm really struggling. I know all of you are too, with what's coming up and what's going to hit us this year at town meeting. And I am a big proponent of schools and libraries, the whole thing. But my concern is this process was pretty rough getting to where we are now. And Article 17, you're asking for additional $260,000. That I can understand. The real issue is going to be when we either ask for a debt override or the exclusion. And coming up with, I'm not really feeling there's a concern about what's happening for a lot of the residents in this town, the seniors, because I'm getting a lot of feedback from them. We're going to have another tax increase. I know you know that. That's coming up. Probably another at least 6%. That's the third year in a row, which should put us at, in just 3 years, 22 or 20%. I'd have to do the quick math. And then we're going to go in November and ask for some kind of exclusion or debt, which is, I think Mr. Preston made a very good point. What's that going to really mean? Because people ask me that. I can't answer that directly, except to say you're going to pay more in taxes. So I really, really want, and I heard Ms. Emery say it, please start, and I know that you are, but really have to start thinking about other priorities or other projects in this town that are just as important. You know, the seniors need a ride. The library is wonderful, and we do have to start making hard choices. And I think ultimately we're going to have to make cuts, body cuts, which is how the town manager called it, meaning cuts in staff perhaps. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mary, I'm going to probably break my own rule and reply, but I can readily assure you that every member of this board takes very seriously the considerations for all residents, taxpayers, our students, our youngest citizens. Our job is not to decide. Our job is to recommend. We make recommendations based on all the information that we can garner and some very insightful questions that we ask. Sure.
I know your job's to recommend, and you're doing the homework, and I appreciate that. My job as a town meeting member, I have to approve it or not approve it. And at this moment, I'm struggling because I'm not convinced that the homework's being done necessarily on the town side, that they're really looking at numbers. 2 years ago, I was at one of the meetings where there was talk of maybe we have to look at cutting staff. I don't think that even happened or was considered. I don't mean to project frustration about this process, but I don't believe it. I didn't hear. I've asked for information and still haven't received it, but I can follow up with the town people. I'm not concerned about that. But that's our job as town meeting members. Sure. We have to make that call. Yes. And I'm struggling to make a call on this. That's all I just wanted to say. Thank you.
Just for your knowledge and town meeting, and you can pass this along, at our Wednesday meeting, our last meeting, we requested the town manager to come back with us with ramifications of a 0.5% and then a 1% cut, not only to the existing budgets, but what the asks and what the town departments are looking for. I would say that would be a meeting, if you pass along to your friends, it would be a great one to be in attendance. And if they can't, watch it, because I think that's going to be revealing. We are aware of the increases in the average residential taxes over the last 3 years and the projection for this coming year. So we're working as hard as we can. John, you there?
Still here.
Great. Has been a decision made on this amount for this feasibility? Is that something, what's the source of funding for that? What do you project?
I do not know at this time. I mean, we are limited on the free cash aspect.
That's why I'm asking.
Right now. So if you're talking this large dollar amount, I know we've done feasibility studies that are been bonded in the past, so that's the way I would be leading as of right now. Again, we're talking at that's the direction I'm leading as.
I speak for, I think, for my colleagues and say if it's bonded, that raises our concern about our debt service number going into next year. So.
Yeah, if we're talking as well, moving, if it's only this extra couple $100,000, I think we could still absorb that amount of money in free cash.
And our free cash, is the report that you gave us, is less than what we've had in the last 3 or 4 years. Is that correct?
It's among the lowest it's been in the past 10. There was one other year that was dipped below where we're talking about right now.
Okay. All right. As soon as you decide in your discussions with the town manager, could you get that information to us of what the source of funding would be? And if you could also share that also with the school committee, school department? Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now we have some bad news for you. School capital's coming up, but we're going to take two other articles before you, okay? So you can go out and get coffee or whatever. Thank you for being so prepared. Speaking for my colleagues, we really appreciate it. John, call you tomorrow. Mrs. Butler? Right here, please. Next on the agenda is report of the Bylaw Review Committee. Chairwoman?
Hello.
Cecilia Butler.
16 North Platte Road, Precinct 4.
Which articles are we talking about today? Which ones?
We were asked to review 10, 16, and 18.
Okay, so let's get all. Wait 1 second while everybody gets, like me, gets to Article 10. Thank you.
And when you hear the votes, you really don't need to find them.
Huh? Everybody all set? We're still turning pages, folks. So. You ready? All right, go ahead, Cecilia.
Okay, Article 10 is to raise the limit on the pool revolving account to $550,000 and to raise the parks revolving account limit to $500,000. I did say 550, right? Yes.
So the pool
550.
revolving to 550?
And then the parks to 500. Now, in November, we passed a bylaw which removes these limits from the bylaw review committee, so that only town meeting needs to vote on these now. We voted to IP this because this is no longer part of our responsibility.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, Article 16 is about establishing a $50,000 limit on the Renewable Energy Fund. It is not a bylaw, it is not a revolving fund. We voted to IP it because we were told this only needs to be approved by town meeting.
And you had one more? What was it?
Yes, Article 18 is a new stretch energy code. We voted to approve that 5-0 unanimously.
So that we need to. Thank you. Any questions from anyone? Sir?
On the, thank you for that. On the specialized energy code,
Yes.
did you get any information about new construction that this would apply to, including additions on homes? And
Okay, it's new construction only. So an addition probably would fall under it, but Rick is over here, you can ask.
Yeah,
him.
she's going to be coming up next.
Okay, because I asked if it pertained to any rehabs, particularly in commercial buildings. No, it's only new construction.
Anyone else? Sure.
Just to clarify, on the first two, am I hearing you right, that you're not recommending that we IP it? You're just saying you all did because it didn't pertain to you?
We IP'd it because we did not have any responsibility for
Yeah.
these two.
But, so you took no opinion on it, really? Yeah.
No, you can do whatever you want.
Thank you, Cecilia.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ron?
Thank you, Cecilia.
You're here about Article 16.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Sorry, I'm going to use my phone for my notes, so I apologize.
All right, we just, everybody back at
Yeah,
16 now? 16? Go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
So I am here today on behalf of Article 16, which is to establish an annual expenditure limit on the Renewable Energy Fund. This is a revolving fund, and the money in there is money that we make from, I guess, net metering credits from different solar panels that we have around town, like the old Town Hall, 26 Bryant Street, before that was decommissioned, and the solar panels that are at the high school. Not sure what's happening with those. And so we have some money sitting in there, and we were hoping to use that money to fund the electric vehicle charging stations that are going to Town Hall. This is a permissible use, but when we were reviewing the permissible uses with KP Law and the town accountant, we realized that we never went back to town meeting to set a spending limit, which is a necessary part of this. And so, yeah, we mistakenly put this on the agenda for the bylaw review committee, but then we realized, 5 minutes in, that this is not for them like anymore. This just goes straight to FinCom, then town meeting. So I'm asking FinCom to please approve the spending limit so we can spend it.
Recommend, not approve.
Yes, recommend. Yes.
Michael?
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'm a little confused, and maybe you can, it's probably me, so maybe you can correct me, but I thought we explained the solar panels in the town as a way to reduce the town's electric costs, not create a fund? Or did I misunderstand?
Yes, so this is a revolving fund to deposit money from net metering credits that we produce through panels that we had previously. This was established through an act from 2016. So this is a very old revolving fund for previous solar projects that we did. This has nothing to do with the solar panel project that we are currently working on, which are not even here yet or operational. So this is money that we got. So this is outside of the taxpayers. This is not money produced through the taxpayer or the town. This is money that we have received because our capacity that we produced was in excess of what we used. So they just cut us a check for that amount So once you generate more than your needed capacity, somebody cuts you a check for that amount because they buy it from you. They buy that capacity. And so when we get that check, we deposit it into this revolving fund. And then that revolving fund had really specific uses that was established in 2016 through a town meeting. But in the language of the article, it said that we then had to come back to town meeting to set a spending limit. So that's what we're doing now. Does that explain things?
Yes.
Okay.
Michelle?
No danger to the taxpayer.
So there's money still going into that now, or you're saying that's money that went in from an agreement back in 2016?
So I'm not quite sure how the money ended up there. I don't know if there are currently actively checks being cut. I would have to check with John and the town accountant. But obviously, if the revolving fund still exists, then we probably are still getting residual checks here and there.
At this point, I know other people have questions. John, could you address that, please? John Arnett?
What was the question? How much money is going into it right now?
Is there currently money going in, or is this something that was from like agreement fees that went in the past and is not currently actively more money going in?
I have not seen money going into it. I'm just going to look at it right now because I don't want to give misinformation. This is going off my memory, so getting a little late. So I do not believe there was much activity going into this account. It has sort of been kind of one of the stagnant things. Again, it's established so long ago, and again, as you've seen me come up time to time, paying up with various accounts. So another example here.
Yeah, so this would be consistent with the fact that we decommissioned the solar panels at 26 Bryant Street, and then also I believe that the solar panels at the high school are not fully operational, maybe, or I think we took them off because of the damage to the roof previously. So I think that would be consistent with why we are not seeing much activity in that account. But I think probably moving forward for the various solar projects out there, if we are cut a check for excess capacity, we would probably deposit it into this very account. So we would not go and create a new revolving fund. It's not a grand amount, it's like $30,000.
Michael?
John, are you looking up the activity and the balance in the account right now? Is that what I heard you say?
That is correct. I'm trying to look at it right now.
Okay. Well, Ronna, if you don't mind, you mentioned that you would use these funds to offset costs for the electronic charging stations. Would this be the only source of funds for the electronic charging stations, or would you be using allocations from other means by which to do that?
Great question, thank you. So this project to install 2 EV charging stations at Town Hall was a project that we had put on to one of the previous town meetings, but as part of budget cuts, we cut that project out. But we had applied for a grant, and so we got that grant, but we were not able to match the funds, so we rescinded that grant and we applied for a different grant, Mass EVIP, which we've used previously to acquire other charging stations. And so we got, I believe, about $47,000 from Mass DEP or the Mass EVIP, but then we still needed some money on top of that to cover the full amount to install these charging stations, because there's 2 of them. So I think it was in the region of $60,000 or $70,000. So when we were digging for sources of funds to help pay for the entire project to see if it was even feasible for us to do, we found this revolving fund. And by we found, it means, me and the current director of facilities were new to the town, so we were not aware that this revolving fund existed, but obviously the town accountant knew about it, and she was like, oh, here you go. And then when we dug into it with KP Law, we realized that we needed to set a spending limit. So to answer your question, yes, this would be the only feasible resource for us to do this project, and we're kind of halfway in it. So we need to set a spending limit, so yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank
We
you.
would not deplete the entire account.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I did find the answer, by the way, I'm sorry. Yes, there's only a small amount of money going into there, a couple $100. I see one deposit, basically in the past couple of years. So it's kind of just sort of a couple funds trickle here, there, and the other as well, which is
Well, what's the balance, John?
about $35,000.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Sarah. The voice from up above interrupted you.
What do you say
No,
the
I was talking
annual
about-
expenditure limit is that you're proposing?
I am unclear. I believe the,
I believe we were gonna go with $50,000, just because of the fact that we could get additional funds coming in from these credits that are turning on, as well as the amount of money that is currently in there. Again, as of this current project, we would not be needing the funds to be depleting the funds, but it would be there. So much like I was talking about the other revolving funds, I would come back and say, hey, can we really change the limit? It should be standard enough to take care of any future projects and let the balance grow and use as needed.
exactly, yeah. So I couldn't remember if it was 50,000 or if we wanted to, or if it was just like vague language, but yes, 50,000, because we wanted to, but not avoid, but just not have to come back the following year if we suddenly got a large deposit and we needed to do a larger project. But this revolving fund not requires, but it advises us to consult with the Sustainability Advisory Committee before we proceed with projects. So we did present this project to the SAC, and they were very supportive. So it's not like we're just spending it on whatever we want.
Kevin?
Were we required to set this up as a revolving fund? Could the town have legally just said, we're going to treat it as revenue and put it into the general fund?
I don't know. This was.
Do you know?
It was actually voted as it's a very strange language as it was voted back in 2016. You could vote it out, but again, you have to close that one.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
Again, it's kind of set up like those, like the revolving accounts, like the Parks and Rec kind of, it's kind of set up like that, but it's very interesting.
Right. It just strikes me the difference, Parks and Rec has routine operations that are funded directly by the thing that they collect the fees for, to pay somebody to lifeguards and things of that nature. This strikes me as different, that it would seem more traditional to treat this as revenue, and then when there's an expenditure that's necessary, that you go through the normal budget process, and it's, because revolving accounts tend to, I don't want to say mask, but they're not as transparent as because they don't come before this body or a town meeting.
So I believe the intention at the time was to be able to have access to the funds so that we can do any repairs needed or projects needed that resulted from our solar panels. So I think that that's why there's a revolving fund, because we just needed access so that if something were to happen, we can spend it on solar and EV related projects. So I think that was the intention at the time.
No, I understand, but, the police department, fire department, schools, all have those kinds of recurring, maintenance needs and stuff, and they fund it out of the budget.
I think your point is well taken, and where it says, it doesn't say in this revolving account, it just says energy fund. What I would like to have, John, if you could handle this for our group, is under which jurisdiction does the appropriations of funds from this account fall under? If it's like some of the others, it's town meeting. Submit it, town meeting votes, and the money is appropriated. Revolving accounts don't have to go in front of town meeting for approval. The limits do, but the actual day-to-day expenses, that's why we have the revolving account. So I think that we I know for myself, I would like to see a clarification of that before we take a position on this article.
Yeah, we can get you the original language, but the original language does specifically mention town meeting, and then the expenditures are approved by the town manager in consultation with the SEC. But I can email you the original language. But it does say town meeting is to set a spending limit in there.
Town meeting sets a spending limit, like
Yes.
the revolving accounts.
Yes.
What I think I'm asking for, well, I don't think, I know, is who has the authority to authorize expenditures from this fund? Is it through town meeting, or is it through the town manager?
The
or
town
whatever?
manager.
Town manager in conjunction with the
The spending limit is set by town meeting.
Yes.
The expenses, the operational expenses, who approves the project? Town manager. And both of those things are clearly outlined in the original 2016 article, which is filed with the state, which is why we're here.
Could you send me a copy of that original so I can distribute it to my colleagues? Because
Yes.
I just know, if we're $35,000 now, and then when the other solar arrays go up across town, this could generate quite a lot of money.
There is no guarantee that we would get any money from these projects.
But let's assume we are, and let's say we have to understand what the controls are and the oversight of the funds.
Yes. No problem. I can do that tomorrow morning.
I see Matt's hand up. You want to come up, Matt, so we can hear you? Thank you. Oh. Outstanding. So is it? Thank you, Cecilia. Go ahead.
So we're getting credits from the panels that we own, and that's why we're getting the intake. When it's a PPA like we're going to be doing, Select will be getting the credits. So it's not going to happen unless we own them. And that's where this is coming from. And it's reduced because the high school, we have a lot of the panels offline because the roof has failed. That's why the credits have been coming slower and slower, because we're not producing as much as we used to. But it's strictly because we own that system.
And just to clarify and answer my own question, it says here that, where'd it go? Money in the fund may be expended by the town manager of the town of Dedham following consultation with the town's sustainability committee or its equivalent without further appropriation for costs associated with energy efficiency upgrades to town and school buildings and other infrastructures, including, boy, is this a long sentence, including but not limited to regulation of building temperatures, windows, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the way it was set up.
So do you still need an email from me tomorrow with this?
I think that covers it. Thank you, Mrs. Butler. Any questions? Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. Next, back to Article 4, which is School Department Capital. Oh, certainly.
So are we going to talk about 10 another day then? Is it on our agenda another day? We could talk about it with Nancy again, because it was on our agenda, but it wasn't really by law, so somebody's going to talk to us about it.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, because we did hear about 16 and 18. Are we done with 18 too?
That's coming up later.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. Sustainability Committee, you're up next. 18, yep. Most of the time, we know what we're doing here. It just gets a little crazy sometimes.
Hang in there.
All right, let's get back to Article 4. Which is school facilities.
Can I point out there is a correction that needs to be made on this?
Certainly.
On the rubber membrane roof section replacement,
Yeah.
You all aware of the notes? This actually is not part of the consolidated project. That's a typo on there, just so you guys are aware.
Which one?
The second line down, the rubber roof membrane section replacement,
Okay.
that's actually, we're asking for that money for the Green Lodge.
So just take that line off of here totally?
Well, I wouldn't take the line off, I would just take the note off on the,
Oh.
under your note.
Oh, we'll be consolidated.
Yeah, it's not the same. We're doing a consolidation project that we've talked about in the past, but this.
Oh, from the, what was for the Parks and Rec building over, no, not the
No.
other one. That's last year, yeah.
So this is, yeah, this was just a copy and paste error, I believe, on that note.
Why don't we approach this, let's start out with the first one that we have here, which is flat roof section 1 phased replacement. And that's for what school?
That's for the Dedham High School, and that is for over the, what's affectionately called the boys' gym. Several of you guys were part of the tour that we had a couple of Saturdays ago to firsthand see what the issues are over there. We've identified this 26 or 27 different sections of roof at the high school. There are different elevations, there are different, the school had a lot of additions, but what we've identified is the greatest need for school at this point, because there's a lot of failures, but the one that's being most impactful is over the gym. It's creating safety hazards for our players. It's really bad, and it's who witnessed the tour. It's apparent, very apparent, that it's completely failed. So we've identified that. Superintendent Murphy indicated earlier that we've also applied to the MSBA for the accelerated repair program. We've asked, there's a couple of sections of the high school that are not eligible because they have to be over 25 years of age, even though the sections are not in good shape. One of them is actually one of the worst roofs. We are actively trying to seek funding to do the majority of the building with 47%, hopefully.
How many square feet is this? About?
On this particular one?
About? Approximately?
It's 200 by about 100, so would it be 4,000?
200 by 200? 40,000.
40,000. Why don't you get back to us on that?
Yeah, okay. The entire structure is about 100, yes, 40.
Why don't you do that, okay?
I think if I can refresh your memory too, in our initial presentation, we provided you with some photos of how the roof is impacting the safety of our students, and how we have at this time makeshift tarp basins. We have tubing that will catch rainfall, bring it down the side of the gym and into a container, and that will be emptied. So there is a significant impact, not just to the roof itself and the way in which water damage can affect other materials part of a gym, but this has a significant impact on the kids beneath the roof.
Is that
Cindy?
roof, is that even usable? If it's in this state, is that?
So right now, we're able to catch, right now we're able to keep up with it between the different contraptions and the constant, we have contracted services coming in, and they're just basically putting patch on top of patch, which doesn't last. We get a couple of months out of it, up to a year. But we just continually add more, basically Band-Aids, and they don't last.
Workarounds, right.
Yes.
There, I believe, Matt, one morning this year, when after a significant storm, that I asked Director Hafner to not have students in the gym that particular day.
Anyone else? Okay. Next, the one you said is not part of the consolidation, but is the rubber membrane roof section replacement, and that's for what school?
Green Lodge Elementary School, this is for the auditorium as well. The auditorium is more than just a gymnasium. Not the auditorium, it's the gymnasium. It's more than just a gymnasium. They do all sorts of programming in there too, so it's affecting more than like at the high school, it's, that gym is rented out or used continuously. This one is also impacting education in there because they have before and after, and they also have programming in there throughout the day. So this was elected because of, we know we have a bunch of different roof sections. This was kind of a, needs to be done, and it was a smaller piece of roofing that needs to be done, so we tried to fit this in so it was appropriate because we have larger pieces that we're holding off, so we tried to balance the request with this one.
Okay. Any questions?
I have a quick one.
Sure. Go ahead, Sarah.
Is this roof one of the roofs that was in the projection, the Green Lodge projection for the 7 years of roof?
Yes, yes. So I put in there 400,000 because what you don't see in there is the design services, which is about $50-something thousand. That's why I put the 400 in there.
Okay, thank you.
Next one is kitchen roof section replacement.
This is that big convoluted, but it's cost savings project where we have money for elevator upgrades, for an ADA elevator upgrade. We also have money for walk-in refrigerator and freezers. We've learned the roof on that is also leaking actively into the kitchen. And there's also a rooftop heating unit that is, I don't think it's original, but it's very old. That section of the building was from the early 60s, so I think it's its second rooftop on that one. So the plan is to have one large project, taking the funding from the elevator, taking the funding from the walk-ins. We're requesting funding for a roof and the heater because they're all in the same spot. They're all adjacent to one another. Have a large project so we get a larger contract that could handle the time frame, because that's the major concern is this has to be done during a summertime because it's absolutely impactful to the school. The kitchen can't operate without a working elevator. We can't operate without walk-ins. We need heat, and we need a roof. So the intent is to take these different funding sources. We already have 2 of the funding sources, but we're asking for the roof over it and the heating unit over it and combining it into a larger project, which we think will be much more appealing to contractors.
Questions? Good. Next one is,
So I hit the C-wing. I didn't hit the C-wing rooftop units. You guys are aware of those large units at the high school?
yeah.
We have 2 units that don't actively work with their cooling capacity, which we need. This is the cost to rent a large crane, replace the large evaporator coils, and also bring up some motors, which you need an absolutely gigantic reach to get up there because there's no access any other way. So this is to correct our rooftop unit issues. So the school, who relies on the cooling capacity for some of their programs, can work efficiently.
Questions? Just one thing, and my math could be off, sometimes it is, but we're talking about all the roofs and other aspects, and all centered on the high school, except for one for the Green Lodge, talking about $1,250,000 in total.
More than that at the high school.
But I stand corrected, but that's an observation, not a statement or anything else. It's just that's, and we talked about this during the capital segment of the hearings, and it's just, how many roofs up there total?
26 or 27 altogether.
Yeah. A lot of roofs.
You have to remember that facility is 23,000 square feet. It's a massive structure. The ECEC, for example, is 51,000 square feet.
51,000, yeah. So
It's a massive structure which is heavily used, and it
It was added on. The
multiple
add-ons.
times.
Yeah.
So
All right, next, security cameras, what's,
so this is for Dedham Middle School. There are zero, correct me, there is one interior security camera from the vestibule the security vestibule. We have no eyes inside that building. You truly, truly need to be able to monitor remotely, for different operations throughout the school, for keeping an eye on classes, but for incidents, you need to have capacity to see what's going on for incident command, and it's a necessary tool to have these days. Feel extremely passionate about this one, because our other elementaries besides the Avery doesn't have much either, but so right now we have the high school that has interior cameras, the ECEC has interior cameras. Something that we really have to focus on, and I know that the school committee and my bosses, the intent was to hold off, see what was going on with the elementary schools, but we need to have that capacity for safety. And I did look into other options for you guys to do the Cadillac version and everything, and we feel this is going to give enough without going. We can expand later if we find gaps, but our company feels very confident that this will give us more than adequate coverage.
this would be a summer project also, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Questions? Athletic training facility upgrade.
This was, so if you guys saw this, it was the men's coaches locker room in the high school that was converted into our training facility because the facility they had was basically a 10 by 10 closet. It wasn't enough to treat more than 1 or 2 kids at a time. They had one table, is my understanding. So what we have now is a very dumpy bathroom that we've made into a athletic trainer facility. There's all sorts of different tripping hazards, cosmetics. It's just a gross space. It's functional. We would like to update it and make it a little bit more attractive, and instead of having your head next to closed off urinal piping, kind of make it just more appealing and function better. And also make it more efficient because there's all sorts of old equipment in there that from yesteryear that we want to remove and reduce.
I'm assuming.
Oh.
Sorry. No?
Go ahead.
Well, I assumed you were going to say something. Because CEC, I just want to hear some of the reasonings. I know CEC voted no on this.
Yes.
But the town manager is saying yes, so I don't know if you have any comment on
I
that.
can tell you that it was not a unanimous vote to not recommend this. It was if I recall correctly, it was a 3-2 vote to not recommend. I can tell you that based on what I recall, this seemed to be de minimis as far as repairs go. This was part of the commentary made during deliberations. The roofs and all the other items that you had were far more important. I can speak for myself by saying I was one of the folks that wanted to recommend it simply because of the small dollar amount involved, number one. Number two, the pictures were just despicable. We also understood that other schools visiting teams might have to use this facility, and let's have a little pride. I mean, the school is old enough and there's a lot going on. I mean, if we can fix something this small, let's go for it. However, the vote was 3-2, and I can see that the town manager did recommend it, so.
Just to give you further background, we're planning on self-performing the work to save the costs because
I had that note from last time, yeah.
So the work will be in-house?
Yes.
I will also add that over the course of a year, we have 700 athletes at the high schools. Now, some of them count twice because they're multi-sport athletes, but we have over 700 students that would, at one time or another during a sporting event, potentially benefit from using that space.
Okay. Oh, sure, Mike.
So I also think, I didn't get the tour, but seeing the pictures, and I remember from our last conversation about this, no safety expert, but it looked dangerous.
There's different tripping hazards as far as different flooring materials.
Once it gets wet, too, right? I mean,
Well, yes, some of it, yes. There's a mixture of best efforts with no budget. So there was, we have some of this rubber flooring over here, so we're going to put it in this corner here, type stuff, yeah. So I guess I'm me speaking out of turn, but it's not as important as a roof, but it's still important.
thank you.
Didn't I hear the AD at one of the school committee meetings make the statement that even if our teams had qualified for postseason, that we would not be able to host because of the nature of the facility that we were?
I believe that was with parking issues.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Ms. Briggs, would you like to say something?
He said tennis courts.
Oh, yeah, tennis court.
Oh, tennis court. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought parking because there was what is this, a very, potentially, they went into the playoffs and we couldn't help them because there wasn't enough parking. So that was
Okay, just,
where I came from on
I
that.
thought I heard that at one of the school committee meetings, that the AD had said that.
Pick your problem.
So if the water doesn't fall on you, you can't get, you fall in the training room, okay. Any other questions, or, go ahead, Sarah.
I just wanted to note that I did go on the facilities tour and saw the training facility, and it was very clean and well-kept, but it is in an old bathroom, so and there were tripping hazards, so you could see that what Matt's talking about.
It's very grungy, it's just,
Yeah, I don't want to say anything else.
You'll be voting yes.
Any other questions? Anyone? Okay. And last, we have high school exterior facade, scraping, priming, painting, the whiting half side, correct?
yes, sir. Which is, we have all, on top of the single pane windows that could very much use being replaced, it's really unattractive. We have no curb appeal. We have constant feedback from the community about how despicable, deplorable the building looks. This is an effort to make the building show nicer, and even though it's an old building, throw maintenance on it. But this is strictly to do the front. What we would be doing is hiring a contractor, an asbestos contractor, to lightly scrape and sand the panels, get off all the loose asbestos, and then use a primer to coat it. We would then go back and scrape the white paint on the frames, yeah, or just scrape off loose. We would then paint the white, and then paint the panels red again, just as a purely cosmetic, but it's worse. The back of the building's worse, but you don't necessarily see that. But it would make a big difference in the.
You talk about the back, you're talking about the courtyard area?
Everywhere, the front is actually the probably the most intact. It has less sun, but it really could use a nice coat of paint on it, and then we can't just paint it. We have to deal with the asbestos.
Questions?
I
Kevin?
think it's the surface area that you're talking about. Like square footage wise.
Jesus, so the whole from the high school?
And you're gonna scrape asbestos and it's for $50,000?
It's for $32,000. All we're doing is removing the loose asbestos,
Right.
which they have a firm.
But they need the hazmat, the whole McGill to do that.
We have a quote from a vendor, a state-approved vendor. I think it was $32,000 for that. We came up with the additional funds for the painting and equipment to scrape, and just the paint alone is going to be probably $8,000 to paint that. So we were working with a number that we were given last. It was November.
October? Yeah.
Yeah, it was right as we were compiling our
Oh, yeah, you're talking about a number, like you're talking about the estimate then?
No, we were given a number from a vendor to do the front.
Oh, the vendor, okay, not from any appropriation.
I hope we ever have this reaction that a number seems low to me.
Yeah.
Well, because they're not removing, so, and it's because
Kevin, are you all right?
it's outside, so it changes the criteria and,
Oh, yeah, okay.
it's not removing and disposing of, this is just a light scrape, so it doesn't, so he has something to put primer on it, and then once they put the primer on, we can paint over it.
Right.
If it flakes again, we'll be having another conversation. But this will be good. And in the front of the building, it's also lead paint, which we're allowed to change ourselves, or scrape ourselves. One area of the school we can't is where our Delta program is, because there's children under 5, so there's different regulations for lead removal. But we have trained staff that we will perform all that internally.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sir?
So I'm just confirming, I'm hearing that some of this will be in-house work as well. Just-
Yes, we're trying to, we try to self-perform as much as we can. It costs us probably a quarter what it does to pay a contractor. We have a lot of projects, so my team's going to kill me because I'm committing them a lot, but yes.
Okay, anything else on school facilities at this point? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
How do they say this, dismissed?
I have a question. What was the Boy Scout doing? Just sitting in for a little bit?
I think he was in the wrong meeting.
Tribal Parks.
Yeah.
My son was done with his Eagle project, so I was curious what he was doing, given that was the case.
It's operating, isn't it?
Which one's up? This, I mean, I don't care, really, they're all the same.
Oh, it's up this, I think it's a focus graphic. Article 18, thank you for your patience, come on up. I'll hold on till we get to that. Here it is. Hi.
Hi.
Introduce yourselves, please, and your...
I'm Michael DeWinter from the Sustainability Advisory Committee, live on East Street.
Okay,
Emily Walton, also from the Sustainability Advisory Committee. I'm on Eleanor Street.
thank you. And you're here to ask, there was an article to adopt the municipal opt-in specialized energy code, is that
Correct.
correct? Okay. Could you just talk about that and explain it and how it applies to Dedham?
Yep. So in 2021, 2022, the Baker administration adopted some new climate legislation, and along with that, some new building code standards. The building codes in the state of Massachusetts, there's a base code, which is kind of like the minimum energy standards that every building has to adhere to, no matter where you live. Above that, historically, has been the stretch energy code. The town of Dedham adopted the stretch energy code in 2010 when we became a green community. So we've been at that kind of higher benchmark since 2010. With the climate legislation a couple years ago, they introduced a new option for towns, which is the specialized opt-in municipal code. And towns, as the title suggests, have to opt into it. So it would have to go to a vote at town meeting to opt into that specialized code. To give you some general idea of what that opt-in code includes, it's kind of like an incremental update to the stretch code. We're already adjusting to updates to the stretch code because we've already kind of like opted into that. And so when they update it, we move up with those updates. But the opt-in code would go just a little bit further, and the way our committee views it is that it would kind of be a good consumer protection measure for residents in Dedham, as well as it would position us to meet the state goals of greenhouse gas emissions reductions over the next 5, 10, 30 years. So generally, it's only for new construction. This came up a minute ago, I think. It only applies to new construction. It does not apply to additions, renovations, updates, only new construction. For residential new construction, if the new construction is all electric, the requirements are exactly the same as the stretch code, which we already have to adhere to. If the new construction includes fossil fuels for heating or whatever, it just adds an additional requirement for either solar, or for solar and pre-wiring, so that if we are able to, as a state, move our electric grid to more sustainable energy sources in the future, and if, as we predict, in the future, there may be more push toward being more electric, the homes are prepared for that, so that would avoid costly retrofits in the future. For commercial buildings, again, it's only new construction. And again, it's very similar to the stretch code for most types of buildings. This is in a chart that hopefully you got. And so the main difference is, like, there are a variety of ways to meet the stretch code, and one of them is passive house. And so for the opt-in specialized code, it would require the passive house option, and then also some additional solar and pre-wiring depending on the square footage and the type of building.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Questions? Sarah?
Thank you for this. When I was reading through the CMR provisions, the reason I asked about the new construction and the additions is because it seemed like some additions did fall under it, but I guess I'm satisfied that you're saying that it doesn't affect additions and renovations and updates, because I'm worried about the older housing stock we have, and if you have an addition that you're doing to your home and then suddenly you have to comply with some of these energy requirements that you're then having to remodel your whole house to bring the envelope up to code.
Yeah, I have it pulled up. My understanding is that it does not apply to any addition or renovation.
It's brand new construction.
Brand new construction, yeah.
And that's for commercial as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Not to say that there aren't energy codes that would apply to a new,
Sure.
they are, in essence, the stretch code that we already operate under.
Right,
So-
yeah, they would still have to build to that code,
Exactly.
but just not the additional opt-in.
Right.
Yeah, this vote that we would take would not change that.
Right.
We would have to meet that
And we've had,
regardless.
that's been just a point of clarification with several people who say, what about if I want to do something with my gas stove or something? It's like, well, you live in a house that's already existing, right? This opt-in municipal code does not apply to you by definition. And so people then realize, okay, this is brand new construction. So that's an important point to remember.
And I think the consumer protection point is a good one, just because it is cheaper to do it and not retrofit.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Kevin?
Do you know how many Massachusetts communities have adopted this?
33.
33. Any around here?
Including Norwood, Brookline, the city of Boston, the city of Worcester, Needham, Wellesley. In total, those 33 communities represent about 27% of the population of the Commonwealth. And there'll be several more voting this spring, more voting next fall. So it's only been before communities for about a year and a half now, right, before election. And there's quite a bit of progress already made and further momentum.
I would have expected to read about pushback, just because, the political drama that we all live with, something like this, I'm surprised it hasn't attracted more attention in those communities.
For me, I think the compelling point is the consumer protection angle of it. And again, that this is new construction. It's great. I mean, I'm looking at an upgrade in our electrical in our house. It was built in 1910 to be able to replace our gas stove. And it's going to be quite costly to do that electric circuitry and increase the amperage. So to better use the solar panels that we already have on our house, it makes sense to, remove the gas stove. But the new homeowner who has a house that was pre-wired won't have that decision to make.
Thank you.
All set? Michael?
Thanks for presenting this information to us. And I just have kind of a follow-up of what Kevin was just touching on. Just curious, why would somebody oppose a code change such as this? What would be some of the reasons that you may have been approached with or you may have heard out there in the world as to why somebody might not want to change this code or update this code?
So we have been doing a lot of outreach. So we have gotten a lot of questions. A lot of the questions center around cost for the builder or cost for the homeowner or potential future homeowner. The cost to build all electric at this point is on par with building a fossil fuel home. And in some cases, you'll see that it's estimated cheaper because of incentives, and also because you get both heating and cooling with the electric heat pump system. But if you want to opt into the fossil fuel route, like you still want a gas burner, you still want a furnace, then to do the pre-wiring and the solar, that sort of starts to tip it potentially more expensive, although it totally depends on the project and it depends on the incentives you qualify for. So that's some of the pushback we've heard. But we've been doing a lot of research on like what data actually exists around cost, and it's not, I don't know how you would characterize it, but it's not compelling enough, convincing enough for us to think that it actually would be that much more expensive.
Yep. And to the homeowner who's going to have that new home, again, it's going to be, if a fossil fuel systems are elected by the builder, the pre-wiring will ensure that once they make a transition 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 years down the road, it's a less costly upgrade. They would also have the benefit of solar PV, solar panels on the house, which lead to lower operational costs going forward. But as Emily said, a lot of the technologies around heat pumps have made dramatic improvements in the last 12 months, 24 months. And so some of the cost data that may have been done, many years ago is constantly being upgraded.
And I think that's the other main point, is that if you have solar panels, you're going to save so much money over the first 5, 10 years that'll cancel out any potential higher cost to install those solar panels. And in new construction, it's not really that much more.
What's that?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mike Emery?
I was going to just pick up on that. Do you have any sort of a use case of, and I don't know what an average size new house is now. It seems like it's 5,000 square feet, but whatever that might be, what is the differential building cost, investment cost for something? Is that available?
So it's tough because most of the research has been done on the stretch code specifically and not as much on the specialized opt-in code because it's new. As Michael said, it's only been up for a vote for the last year and a half. And so even the towns who got in early are only just kind of implementing it. But there is, in the materials we sent you, there's a Department of Energy Resources study that was done around stretch code building and kind of the comparison of electric and fossil fuel. And that's linked in the document we shared with you.
I didn't, in looking at that though, I didn't see anything that says that, okay, I'm spending $400,000 as a builder to build this house. Now I'm not going to have to spend $420,000. It doesn't really, I didn't see that anything in there. It was sort of at a higher level in what they projected as the overall cost benefit, unless I missed something.
Yeah, no, they looked kind of retroactively at projects that had been completed and compared the pricing for that.
And one of the things that makes that different, that calculation complex, is that the opt-in specialized code does not require all-electric construction. It does allow for mixed fuel system.
Yeah, but you just have the electrical capacity to build in the future, right?
I think the electrical, like the pre-wiring component of it is, I think, fairly small.
Yeah.
It'd be helpful to have a number what fairly small looks like. If it's like $3,000, then it's a no-brainer. If it's $30,000, then it becomes something.
I think it's more like less than 3,000, but certainly not
that's be interesting to know. That's all. Thanks.
All set? Cindy?
Thank you. So you said that over the last year and a half, approximately 33 communities have initiated this process. Have they fully implemented it, or it's still in the progress stage? And have you been able to reach out to those municipalities to get their feedback? Either on how it's going, is it successful? Do residents participate? What is their feedback to you about that?
So the timeline for adoption is always at least 6 months after the municipality votes on adoption. So in our case, the specialized code would go into effect on Jan 1 of 2025. So while there are many municipalities who have adopted it and are in the transition stage, during which permits that have been pulled and will be pulled right up until January 5th of 25, in our case, would still be under the stretch code. The feedback that we've heard has been positive, and there's been a lot of collaboration in the building community and in architects and in town leaders to prepare for this code change or the code possibility, they're building projects increasingly under this. In fact, a lot of municipal school buildings are being built to the opt-in code to avail themselves of additional incentives from the MSBA.
Passive house in particular is used a lot now for affordable housing because it's such a tight envelope for the building that the operational costs are so low. So in affordable housing, it completely makes sense to do passive house. And so even in municipalities where it's not required, people are doing it. But yeah, I'm trying to think of some of the early adopters. We've gone to some kind of info sessions and trainings with some communities who have adopted it. And the feedback is largely that builders figure out what the building code is and they comply with the building code. Someone from the city of Boston was at one of our info sessions a month and a half ago, and basically said they all the builders, the architects, everyone kind of worked together, figured out what is this going to mean for us, and came up with a plan and kind of figured it out. So, I think as with the stretch code, which we're adopting to now, and we've heard a lot of feedback about kind of adjusting to the changes that we're already kind of committed to. It's an adjustment and it's kind of like a learning, but once they understand it, they can move forward and run with it.
Okay, thank you.
All set?
Thank you.
Kevin?
Has the building department or the town manager weighed in on this?
We've met with Ken Semino a couple times on this and have consulted him throughout our deliberation on this, and he's very much of the mind that he'll enforce whatever building code the town, decides to adopt, and it's been, a good resource for us.
Thank you.
Mass Save, is there a coordination between what this effort is and Mass Save? Because I know in some instances they do save homeowners and builders and whatever some money. Is it
Yeah.
incorporated into what they look at, or is it just once it's set, then they come in, or?
Yeah, I guess, I'm not sure exactly how to answer that. Mass Save partners with Eversource, and they do offer incentives for most of the kind of requirements that are involved in the opt-in code. I don't know how much they were coordinating with the state when the parameters of the opt-in code were developed. Do you?
Yeah, I'm not sure beyond that what kind of connection there is that there. One is an energy code. Mass Save is partially funded through, I think, all of our electric bills, right?
Yep.
And they do all kinds of great things to advance energy efficiency.
Yeah, there are significant incentives for solar, for heat pumps, for all the kinds of equipment, I guess, that you would use in this opt-in code. But I don't know how integrated they were in the creation of the opt-in code.
So they just basically would enter into it as they do now?
Yeah.
Have come out to my house, do this, and then there's an assistance at some time with the funding and other factors that are involved with it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're more retrofitting
Yeah.
and upgrading the envelope so that you can move forward. Yeah.
Okay. Liz, anything?
No, I was the chair of the sustainability committee when we passed the stretch code, so I'm
all right.
Comfortable with the content. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, hey, come on up.
Hi there, Ed Dockham, 75 Westchester Circle. I'm going to come from this from a different point of view. I oppose the adoption of the article. First, the town has already adopted the more stringent code since 2010. Second, there will be a cost burden on new homes and businesses. Some of the cost burdens will be a transition towards all-electric and zero fossil fuel buildings, pre-wiring of future electrification, and mandatory solar installation for certain mixed-use projects. While energy efficiency is crucial, these requirements can drive up construction costs significantly and put Dedham at a disadvantage, deterring potential new businesses and new large home construction. Third, our aim to create sustainable, energy-efficient municipal buildings must be carefully weighed against the cost of our own town's financial realities. For the town manager's budget message, it is clear from the LRFF benchmarking study and the downward trend in unused levy capacity, the town's budget is not sustainable in its current form. I feel adding the specialized energy code will not only add to an already difficult financial budget decisions, which will only be needed to be addressed in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thanks for coming in. Sorry for the delay.
That's okay, thank you.
Thank you.
But next time you put a warrant article in, ask for like 6 or 7, something like that.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Oh. Oh, hold on, don't, go ahead, Paul. Okay. You on there? Paul, you on? Hello, Paul? Speaking too loud. Thanks. No?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll start off with information. That presentation that was given to the select board and the planning board, both comments from those boards said that there wasn't enough outreach to the residents and to the commercial developers. There was one brief meeting summarized, and the legislation from the state is 14 pages long. So off the top, that was not discussed in terms of the page by page, line by line, chart by chart. So I would suggest that, if possible, to have those 14 pages, either a link emailed or physically mailed to all town meeting members. That 14 pages should be included in the town meeting warrant booklet, and it should also be posted, all 14 pages, in the Dedham Times. The discussion about existing buildings and additions, etc., whether it is caused by flood, fire, or they want to add an additional room. There's a specific chart that says if it's over 1,000 square feet, you have to adhere to the HERS chart, which wasn't talked about by those two people. And that HERS chart will specify that pretty much when you talk to the building commissioner, that the entire building, if it's over 1,000 square feet, regardless of why it needs to be upgraded or added to, will be in accordance to the new opt-in stretch code if it's adopted. And that's going to cost tens of thousands of dollars for the average homeowner. And all of the lovely state rebates never cover, almost never, the entire 100% of those costs. And that's just in the small scale. Thinking of the two large commercial buildings that are going to be built next to Legacy Place, they're roughly, they are roughly 200 units just for the one complex, and another one of like 170 units. And if they have to adhere to that new stretch code, if you're looking at the average, whether it's an apartment or condo, say they cost $350,000 each, times the 70 units, then from what I've researched and what other people have mentioned, that the cost to adhere to the stretch code is basically anywhere from 3 to 5% on top of the construction costs. So if that would bring the average anywhere $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 additional to the 350,000 per unit. So when I did the math of a 200 unit complex just for the one building, times 350,000 for each unit, then you add on another 5%, that comes out anywhere from $3 to $4 million additional just for that one building complex to build that. And I'm saying to myself, that's one complex, another one's going to be built 100 yards away or so, and that's another $2, $3, $4 million addition. And then you get the hotel that has been on the in stagnant situation for the past year and a half now. And if they build that hotel, that's going to have to adhere to that new opt-in stretch code, and that's several million. So I'm thinking to myself, why would developers want to come to Dedham and pay an extra $2, $3, $4 million on top of that $50, $60, $7 million project each, or go to a surrounding town that doesn't have that stretch code? Right now, we're not at the base code. As was mentioned in 2010, we already went to the stretch code. So why is the town forced to be the martyrs trying to save the environment when we're already at the stretch code right now? So I would suggest to indefinitely postpone this and have them do more outreach, more meetings, and before town meeting, have those 3 bits of information, the full 14 pages, sent to the town meeting, in the warrant booklet, and on the town's, in the Dedham Times as well, because when it comes to the existing homes, they pretty much said it didn't cover, it doesn't affect existing homes, and it does, for 1,000 feet and higher. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. If you want to say something, yeah.
So I guess I don't.
Paul, just hold on. Paul, they're going to just clarify some points for the committee here, but what I don't want to do is have this involve the back and forth. So they'll have their presentation, their response, and then that'll be it, okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
It would be nice if they actually talked about 14 pages, if that's my bottom line.
I think that that is going to be the focus of their response.
Yeah, so it's interesting, the 14 pages for some reason actually sticks in our minds because I think I know which 14-page document he's talking about, which I think is actually linked in the info sheet that we have shared with you. And we actually discussed like how much of this should we share, how much is accessible. A vast majority of that document actually refers to the stretch code. And so it's not, it's applicable to the opt-in code, but we are already committed to it. And so the HERS rating, for example, the HERS rating, we can go into that, but I think the point is the stretch code that we currently have and the opt-in code that we're discussing adopting have the same HERS requirements. So that's kind of why we've not been talking about it, because it's exactly the same between the stretch code and the opt-in code.
I totally understand that. 99% of the residents of Dedham don't know the difference between the two, so it'd be good to go over the existing and the new proposed.
Yeah, and just on outreach, we've done one information session thus far, which was well-attended and broadcast by Dedham Cable. We also have another one coming up at the end of this month, which we would love to have you attend. And please help us spread the word. We have done outreach already to town meeting members through the district chairman, the precinct chairman, and we'll do certainly more of that. But yeah, thanks for the thanks for the question.
All right, thanks, Paul. And thank you.
Yes, I appreciate it, but will those 3 areas that I mentioned, the full 14 pages, will they be sent to the town meeting members on the warrant booklet and posted in the Dedham Times, so all residents will be able to read the 14 pages and be fully informed?
Paul, why don't I work with the town manager's office relative to the content of the 14 pages and possibility of including that in the warrant book as part of the appendage. Okay, is that okay?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, folks. I am going to, Ken Semino had planned to come, but they had another meeting that he had to attend. I'm going to ask that Ken attend our Wednesday meeting for any clarification about the different things. Sure.
I went to their first info session. It was very informative. They had a PowerPoint and a lot of questions, and a lot of the confusion at that meeting also was related to people getting bogged down and issues they have with what we are already committed to. So that would be, I think the more information, the better, obviously, but I understand their concern is if a lot of that 14 pages is not what's new, that can get confusing. So it would need to be really clear about what's actually being voted on versus what Dedham already has.
Thanks. Anything else? All right, that. Old and new business. Oh, John Annette, you there? Great. One of the things we were looking for is the ARPA spending and balance update. What's your timetable on getting that out to us?
That should be coming directly out of Leon's office with Brady's there. That's town manager. He's been doing all this reporting. So he should have provided that to the documentation to you already.
Okay, so we can anticipate that either tomorrow or before our Wednesday meeting, correct?
Did we get it?
Absolutely.
We didn't get it.
I didn't see it yet.
All right. I think that, what else? All right. A couple things about Wednesday's meeting. I forwarded Mike Butler's presentation on the statement of net worth at this point, net position, I should say. So he will be going through that Wednesday night. He will be the first on our agenda. And also, we have the report from Leon responding to our request for the 0.5% and the 1% adjustments to the asks in terms of the budgets. So we can look forward to that. One other thing about Wednesday night, I was told our meeting's at 6:30. The select board is meeting at 6, and they're going to just to do a recognition and presentation to the woman, and I can't, the name just escapes me, but the woman that assisted in the accident at Whole Foods, where the woman person was trapped under a car, and she helped to extricate them. Huh? Frazier, yes, thank you. So that'll be at 6, but I spoke to the chair of the select board, and that's not going to take that long, so we would look to start at 6:30. So just so everybody's aware of that, and be aware of with the cranes and all the other stuff, it's an interesting parking around here, I guess. So plan for that.
Has anybody done any projections on the library? The possible library? We have the request that's going to come before town meeting for the grant.
The grant.
Application, to support the grant application, but, you know, it's one of those things that doesn't necessarily go through the normal channels of projecting, but there would be, you know, if it happened, it's a significant expenditure.
I don't know of anything that's been spoken about, or...
I mean, it sort of ties into the thing we were talking about earlier about the, you know, 3 schools, a library, down the road, before these bonds for those things are paid off, a high school, and that just to have some kind of rough projection.
I think that's probably part of what they're trying to do. I don't think it's anything that they have.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I think that's probably part of what they're trying to do with the money, is get those projections. I don't think they have any yet.
But that said.
No, I understand.
Oh.
But in other words, if they apply for a grant and they get a grant, and the grant's going to be, like any of these things, you get some portion, I think the highest would be 40%. So if you build a $20 million, $30 million library, the town's responsible for 17, 18, whatever million, and I'm not for or against it, I'm just saying we have to blend it in with all the other projects that are in line and take a look at what the impact would be. And one of the things I worry about the grant is that, you know, it's the old thing, 2 things you could go wrong, you know, you could get it or you could not. But if you get it, there's going to be pretty strong expectations that the town's decided to go ahead and build a library. And again, I'm not against it. I'm saying let's get some financial analysis up front so that we see how these things fit together, that's all.
Well, real quick, I think, Michelle, when we met with Amber, we had a little bit of that conversation. I could try to find some notes, and I think she had some scope and scale. I'm not going to try to remember the number off the top of my head, but it was something along what you just mentioned of what other towns are, did I just imagine that?
I don't remember, but that doesn't mean much. I would have to.
But I think we had some conversation about what that might be. So she might have a thought on that.
But I was under the impression, from what I recall hearing from Amber, was, number one, this grant was for a specific purpose.
Yeah.
It was not repayable. Number one, it was to be used for that purpose, didn't have to pay it back. And then after that initial work was done, the next step would be to decide if they were going to renovate or if they were not.
Right.
Yeah. New one, so I don't-
Any of those.
I disagree with there being any, I mean, this may be more for deliberations, but I don't think what they're looking for now, I wouldn't think of it as tied to any expectation of actually doing anything.
Yeah, I wasn't, that's not what I got from that article either. I totally hear what you're saying, be ready with something.
But as the town talks about all these different
Okay,
things.
I see.
There should be a list of, remember, these other things are in play. You can debate the priority,
Yeah.
whether you do some and not others, but they're all in play.
Okay, I see what
Within
you're
the,
saying. Okay.
hopefully.
Michael?
Although that's getting more iffy as the days go by.
I think, relative to this theme, we talked the last 2 or 3 meetings about doing some type of outreach, getting into the Dedham Times, an article into the Dedham Times, or something to get, public awareness to the, well, I don't want to be dramatic, but the financial crisis we're in, or that we're looking at in the future. How do we get momentum on that before?
It's in the works.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
And I would just say, it was on my mind a lot during the school discussion because I could feel and see the frustration in the audience that we were asking the questions we were asking. And it was making me think how everything's been done like it's supposed to be done. But a crucial part of that is we've never been asked to weigh in ever till now. So we're asking questions. I mean, other than, of course, we have a representative on their committee. So that's true. But these hard questions about the money, the fact that I think I'm probably speaking for most of us, that like financially, a consolidated school is imperative. And
Excuse me.
I don't think that's out there. Right now we're past the point, it feels like we're past the point of no return without people really knowing that. It just seems backwards, and they seemed frustrated we were asking the questions, but it's like, when else do we ask the questions?
But even if we don't have a say, this is the train's left the station, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
We're going to pay the piper down the road somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that means like a dramatic cut in fire or police or something.
Or one of these other schools not being done.
When we run out of the excess levy, so people, yeah, we can still do this one school, but that's a big debt service, even if it's an exclusion. It's still real money that the town has to pay.
Taxpayers have to pay.
Taxpayers have to pay, thank you. So somewhere down the road, something is going to give. And that message isn't out there, obviously.
No, in fact.
Well, a few people get it, but.
I shouldn't say what I would.
Okay. I think I'd ask you all to, I sent it out late this afternoon, but to take a close look at Mike Butler's presentation. He's going to do a statement in deposition because he has some, I've been working with Mike on it back and forth, and I think he's got some insight. It's all obviously relative to comparisons with us with Norfolk County, but part of it is related to specifically the town, where we are right now, and where we possibly could be. We have, as Kevin said, we have a lot of competing interests for projects. And as the person who participated tonight, the taxpayers, how much can they take? Your question about something to be presented, that is going to happen. And it's going to be matter of fact, no positions or anything, just matter of fact.
No opinions, just facts.
Facts.
Yeah.
Which is, as I say, we don't make decisions, we recommend. These are the facts. This is where we are. This is where our unused levy is. This is where it was, this is where it is now. It was paid out over the years to maintain, quote, level of service. Now, there's nothing there. We took $3 million out of that to fund what we have now. Was it going to be next year? We also, as was alluded to, 3 years of 7% increases in average residential. And as we all got the paper, the minimum it's going to be is 6.5, was it? Something like that, 6%?
6.26.
6.26, thank you. So that's minimum, and that's going to be displayed in the presentation we have. And we all understand schools and the importance of schools and the youngsters. I mean, they only have the third grade once. But at the same time, we have citizens, and as a select board member said a couple of years ago, we've always had that concern for our retirees, veterans, whatever. But the last 3 years, it's now cutting into that middle class of folks who have husband and wife, 2 kids, et cetera. And, and all of a sudden, there's another $800 or $900 or $1,000, depending on the value of your property. It's too bad more people don't attend our meetings. This is preaching to the choir, I know. But hopefully they watch. It seems that a couple of people spoke tonight, the message is getting out there.
Yeah.
And they're understanding it. Go ahead.
Just one quick thing.
I was on my soapbox.
When we're putting that together, I think, I'm sure you're probably already thinking this way, but we just have to be sensitive to what the average taxpayer understands. Like, I don't know if the average taxpayer understands the repercussions of running through the excess levy, what that really means. If that fact, set alone, if it really hits home or not, but I'm sure you're probably grappling with that.
We'll need some definitions.
It's very clear, and also, as you know, it's interesting. I started a little project in my spare time, comparing the 5-year financial forecast that the gentleman did for the Collins Institute that we heard, and looking at what his budget expectations were for this year with what we have. I already know he overestimated local aid. He said we're going to get, and what we're looking at right now, and God knows what the state's going to give us, we're given their issues right now. So those are the types of things. But getting back to your point, it's average taxpayer, people read the Times, they're going to get this information. I think we're also going to use district chairs and their information flow, because they have all their email contacts for those folks. And all we can do is get it out, but I think, as you say, it'll be matter of fact, this is what we are seeing right now. Want to make you aware of the fact that you've had this increase, and again, Mike's going to do a great job in terms of when he has his presentation about this factor. But again, as you said, the competing interests. Go ahead.
I took a cursory look at what you sent. I didn't look at it.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at it again, of course, but I'm thinking that, and this might already be in the plan, but if Mike were to get up at town meeting and go over that document, I think the message isn't that deeply buried in the graphs and the commentary at the end, the summary at the end.
Yes.
So it might not take that long, but I just think it might be a good idea for him to do that, because
The couple of those graphs are alarming.
they are. And, when I looked at them, I'll tell you, I went, ugh.
That document evolved from a first, and Mike is fantastic and stuff, and we talked.
And the information, from what I recall, is from 2022, and we're beyond that now, so I don't know what it looks like now. But it's just a precursor to everything else we've been talking about, so it might.
I also extend an invitation to the select board, through the chair, to, they have their meeting before ours, and I told them about Mike's presentation. Probably putting them on the spot, and I'll get yelled at, but won't be the first time.
Just get back to Mike's observation about.
Which Mike?
What is the average, this Mike?
Okay.
What does the average taxpayer know about, what running out of levy capacity means? If they don't already know it, the one thing they're going to learn at lightning speed is that second we bump up against, once we've exhausted our levy capacity, they become players. Because it isn't us in town meeting anymore. Once we hit the levy capacity, they get overrides, they get debt exclusion, they get to vote on the thing. And I think, when I first got on this committee, I said one of my objectives was to serve out whatever time I spent on it without there being a Dedham Taxpayers Association. And, it sort of sounded glib, but it was that we have to conduct ourselves in a way that we don't fuel that. And once we hit that levy, the political dynamic of this town is going to change dramatically. Because we're not driving the bus, and town meeting isn't driving the bus after that. Unless they, take control again.
Because I looked at those towns and the Department of Local Services, and you look at the ones that are, that have no levy, and you look at what their budget is. And there is 2.5, which is applied by the statute of the state, plus new growth. At this town, if we went on that, my calculations would be, we have probably a budget of maybe 4.5 million, give or take. And Leon's budget is, increase was drastically more, well, it's almost 8 million.
At the risk of keeping us 60 more seconds.
It's going to be earlier than we got out the last time.
Yeah, I just, my point that sort of, I guess I lit up my end there a little bit, but is really, I think we all know that these schools need to be replaced. But how do you maintain political support for the things that we need to do? And all that, I think, is tied into what you're talking about, is getting people on board now, getting people engaged now about some of these things. So.
I did not disagree with your comment, and I don't know that she saw the memo, because you were reacting.
Yeah.
It was
No,
kind of,
I'm looking forward to Wednesday night. I've noticed over the years that if you talk to Cecilia about the condition of the town, and then you talk to Mike, you'd never know they were talking about the same town. They come at it from such different angles.
It's one other thing to think about for Wednesday. Nancy asked me if there's some warrant articles that you feel she has to start to prepare the sermon that you give, the recommendation, all the other stuff. So if you can go through the warrant articles, if there's ones that you think we just, as, what do you call that terminology? You make the motion as voted or as approved, or IP'd.
Oh, yeah, we need any edits.
Along those lines. You can start thinking about that, just so we can get ahead of ourselves, because we will meet Wednesday. Our deliberations are scheduled for the following Tuesday and Thursday. I can imagine Tuesday, we're not going to go right into deliberations. I think there's going to be some overflow, extra questions and information that we're going to need from Wednesday. But that hopefully is the plan. And if we can get it wrapped up on the Tuesday, great. But I think this budget that we're going to recommend has far too much importance to rush anything.
Fair enough.
Okay. Liz, anything you want to say as we all gave our sermons?
Not tonight.
Okay, bless you, bless you.
All right, at that point, we have to have a roll call on this. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll do that.
Second, you seconded. All those in favor? Kevin?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Pete? Sarah?
Aye.
Michelle? Chair votes aye.
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 Thank you.